Single Family Design Board for July 5th, 2022. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Here.
Vice Chair Colos,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Here.
Board Member Klein.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak?
I do not see anyone on Zoom currently.
Okay, so let's move on to the approval of the minutes of the Single Family Design Board.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I believe we did receive written correspondence for a general item not on today's agenda, so I just wanted to acknowledge that for the record
Okay,
before we move on.
all right, thank you. So approval of the minutes of the Single Family Design Board for June 6th, 2022. Can we go through the items, please? Are you going to talk about it? Because I know normally someone kind of goes through them.
Apologies.
No problem.
This is not quite used to doing full board, but item 1 was 25 Los Alturas Road. It received project design approval and continue indefinitely to consent for final approval with comments. And the neighborhood preservation findings and hillside district and slope lot criteria were made. Then we had item 2 was 101 Santa Cruz Boulevard. It looks like that project was pre-application consultation and received comments only. Item 3 was 2339 Edgewater Way. That was continued indefinitely to the full board with comments. Item 4 was 1208 Los Alturas Road. The motion was continue indefinitely to full board for project design approval with comments. Item 5 was 2108 Gibraltar Road, which was postponed to the July 18th, 2022 agenda at the applicant's request. And that is all for the June 6th minutes.
All right, thank you. Hearing no comments or changes, may I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colos,
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't present.
okay. Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar for June 13th, 2022. Can we go through the items, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item A on the June 13th consent calendar was 0 Los Tunis Road, which received final approval with the comment that the plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on May 9th, 2022. Item B was 3067 Paseo del Descanso, which received project design approval and final approval with the neighborhood preservation findings and minor zoning exception findings met. And then item C was 15 West Valerio Street, which received project design approval and final approval with findings and conditions. And that was all for the June 13th consent calendar.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colos,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. June 27th, 2022. Do we have the items for that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item A on the June 27th consent calendar was 1258 San Miguel Ave, which received project design approval and final approval with the condition that the elevations accurately show the proposed cable railings and window changes and the following findings, which were the neighborhood preservation findings. Item B was 650 Juanita Ave, which received approval of review after final with the comment that the plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on November 22nd, 2021. And item C was 843 Calle Cortita, which received approval of review after final with comments. Item D was 270 San Rafael, which received final approval as submitted, as the plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on May 31st, 2022. That is all for the June 27th.
All right,
consent
thank you.
calendar.
May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
and Board Member Klein.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Could we go through those items, please, for the consent calendar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item, item A, was 118 Remetto Road, which received approval of review after final with the comment that the project is in substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on October 11th, 2021, and the condition that the larger shrubs be planted along the increased height walls. And item B, 2808 Clinton Terrace, which received final approval as submitted with the comment that the project is in substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on December 20th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances or withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Do we have any of those?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ellen Kokinda, I'm the new design review supervisor, and
welcome.
thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. I wanted to share that City Council appointed a new SFDB member, Laura Lee Anderson. She is an architect, a licensed architect, and she needs to be sworn in, but this was just announced last week. And as soon as she's sworn in, she will be able to serve on the SFDB. So we are looking forward to having her participate. And with that, I just also want to acknowledge Mr. Motisha, who has long served on the SFDB. His term expired on June 30th, so last week. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today, but I did speak with him, and we just want to thank him for his time and service to the Single Family Design Board. And also share that you, Chair Miller, have agreed to stay on another 6 months. I know, and I know, you can't escape us, but has graciously agreed to stay on another 6 months, and as this board is aware that we have different positions available, and you satisfy the professional qualifications for that. So we have a mix, and we want to make sure that we continue to be able to support applicants and the projects coming through, and that we have quorum. So we very much appreciate your time and be able to serve through December this year. So
Thank
that's
you very much.
part one. And if you could pull up, I also wanted to make a quick announcement. So you may have noticed that the city launched a new website.
Yes.
And you may have, I just want to acknowledge that we have a new website, and just want to make it easy so you understand, because it's going to look really different from what it did before, but it's, and the function might be slightly different. But if you go to government, if you get to the main city webpage, you go to government, and it has a drop down for the different boards and commissions, and you can look up Single Family Design Board that way under the directory. But if you go back to where you were, once you actually, there's the landing page for the Single Family Design Board, which just has a makeup of the membership. And but what's going to be most interesting for you, and where you'll spend the most time, is on this Documents tab on the left. So once you see, if you could hover over, on the left-hand side is the Documents. That's really replacing the meeting minutes, the agendas, all of that. So you'll see all of the current documents. We have notices, we have the different agendas for both consent and full board. an accordion, drop-down accordion for all the architectural drawings, public comment that we received, minutes, so it's all done by project. And this is just the first iteration. There will likely be improvements along the way. So the first set of items is really just for the current meetings, but you can look up archive materials going back, and there's the 2022 archive, so anything else that happened in this year. And then further below that is a way that you can look up material for previous dates. I know that's a little, that's the search function is still a little bit wacky in that regard to kind of separate out 2022. But eventually all of this information will be provided in one easy accessible database. So just an FYI. And then if you go a little bit further down, just some things to know. We have just the basic information about the Brown Act posting, the different disclosures for copyright, how people can join to be an interested party to a particular project. We have the links to the meeting procedures and design guidelines, so if you ever need to reference the SFDB design guidelines, or you can go to the other link to the other design guidelines for the neighborhood preservation ordinance. Everything,
Has this been-
all of that is there, exactly. So we have that information there. So everything is really under the Documents tab underneath the Single Family Design Board. So those are the announcements that I wanted to make, and I think that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, yeah, I'd like to follow up on that. Do you know when the new architect will come on board? Is it the next meeting?
It's likely going to be the next meeting, so I'm going to prioritize getting her all her materials, but as Mr. Brentlinger can most recently attest to the amount of work that kind of going through and doing all of the homework to be able to participate in specific conversations, we'll kind of need to make sure that we've got quorum for certain items moving forward. If she doesn't, you have to watch all the videos, read the minutes, and read the public comments. So, but I suspect that she'll be able to start at the next hearing.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, well then I will hold off on my other announcements until we have our new member. So let's move on to our agenda item. We're to item number 1.
Before we move on, could we just open subcommittee reports for the record?
Oh, yes, do we
Mr.
have any
Chair,
subcommittee
apologies for my
reports at this time? And I believe we don't. Is that correct? Okay. All right, thank you.
I had 2 quick items.
Of course.
I noticed today that the housing element draft is available for review through, I think it's the first week in August for comments. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody. And then in pursuit of attempting to problem solve lantern effect issues that we might be seeing more of, I contacted 3M today and talked to them about possible films that could be put on large glazed surfaces. And they do have a product line that they think would help with that. So I just thought I would offer that up as information at large. I think the line that they call it is called Prestige. I think that's the line that they have. There may be other manufacturers that have similar products, but it helps keep glare from emitting outside of a residence. It works in reverse to what we would usually be using it for. So I've just wanted to lob that out there as FYI.
Great. Good to know. All right. Anything else? I think that's it for us. So I will move on to item 1, 11 V Alicia. This is a new item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. If the representative of those projects come forward, that'd be great. This is a proposal to replace the existing garage door and existing wrought iron guardrail at the rear patio with a new glass guardrail associated with a single unit residence located in the Hillside Design District. Project design approval and final approval are requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. Project was last reviewed on consent on March 28, 2022 under PLN 2019-00464. Traditionally, we read the minutes from the previous meeting.
So if I could add.
Is that relevant to this?
It's not really relevant.
That's what I was wondering.
So I do want to comment on this. So this is a project that was, it was actually part of there was another project for the entire site for the house and site, and it received project design approval, final approval, and this applicant and owner came back for a review after final, just of a couple of small changes. So,
Okay.
and it went back, because this is just a consent level review. And this is something that Vice Chair Kalas and Board Member Klein reviewed, and altered the actual, what was approved was slightly different than what was originally being requested. But if, just to clarify, and speaking with the owner afterwards, that review after final is, there's no appealable action beyond that. It is a final decision. And so this particular owner was interested in not having a chance to discuss with the full board and wanting to have a little bit more conversation, but he didn't really have the due process to do so. So I know that he did come back and speak at public comment for items not on the agenda, to just raise the issue and be able to have the chance to do that again. So he is back here today. Just to look, this is a very focused review of just
Yes.
these two items.
Okay.
And it's to have the full board to be able to weigh in, and then give them due process to be able to carry on, depending on, just to open up. And he had a lot of additional information that he wished to share that was not part of the review after final. So again,
Okay.
just providing another forum in which to do so. So I do want to just acknowledge, this generally would be a consent level project. But
Okay,
we're a little
so
different.
do you, so would you make a determination that the minutes are not really relevant to this particular
Right,
presentation?
it's really, just think of it as two new elements.
Okay.
In looking at that particular request, and the applicant and owner are here to present and go through the project.
All right, great. Well, if you could introduce yourselves and show us what you've got.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everybody's faces in person. I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect for the project, and with me is Peter Trent, the property owner. And as Ellen mentioned, the two items that we're reviewing today are, one of them is an 18-inch high railing on a site wall in front of the house, to the south of the house, and the other element is a glass garage door, frosted glass garage door. The house is under construction, and I'm going to let Peter do the presentation because he has quite a bit to say, and I don't need to eat up his time, so go ahead.
I tried to say this all in a 2-minute public thing a few weeks ago, and most of you, I think, were here for that, but now I have a little more time to try to be a little more clear, hopefully. The last meeting that we had with Ms. Kalasi and Ms. Klein was a Zoom meeting. I'm terrible at Zoom meetings. I hate texting, I hate Zooming, there was just a huge disconnect there, and we didn't feel like I got a chance to make any connection and discuss some of the things that come up, because there was a lot of things that came up. You may have all received the letter that I presented at the public hearing. Each of you were supposed to get a copy. Whether you read it or not, I don't know, but that really gives a lot more detail. But long story short, the meeting that we had related to the garage door and the glass rail. And the relevant facts, I felt like there were some of them we didn't get a chance to discuss. Their concern was about a frosted glass garage door and light transmission that would come through it. They were concerned about a lantern effect of that, neighborhood compatibility, and neighborhood opinion. And some of the things we didn't really get to speak to was that our project is subject to Title 24, so we have a light sensor in our garage, or will have one. So you can't leave the lights on all night. So it's, the amount of light that's going to come out of it's pretty minimal. Energy efficiency is something that's important. The California Energy Commission initiated a comprehensive study on lighting together with UC Davis, and they determined that daylighting was super important to energy conservation, and a glass garage door gives you that.
So let me stop you. When you're saying that, it allows the daylight from outside to go into the garage.
Right.
Got it.
So it goes both ways. I've seen people come to this board with a glass garage door, and the board has said, well, we're not so sure about it, but if you put some opaque film on the inside of the glass, we're okay with it. I think I have some reasons that's probably not necessary here, but that wasn't discussed as a potential option to mitigate the issue. Specific to my house, the street neighbors across the street are way above me. They're super high on a hill. And so I interviewed all of them, and they all stated, without any prompting, I can't even see your garage. The topography is such that they can only see the top of my house. I did also interview just about everybody I could get to answer their door on my street and showed them what it would look like, and they were very happy with what it would look like. So in terms of public opinion, I got kind of overwhelming support. I realize they're not the board, but I think it's important what your neighbors think.
Right.
The other thing that, I do have something else here. Outside my house, that also you couldn't have known from looking at the plans, but literally at the corner of my property is one of those city streetlights that shines all night long. So even if I manage to leave the lights on in my garage, that city streetlight is this kind of ugly orange glare that I just don't think is really the issue, you know, or the issue of any light coming out of my garage really trumps that. So I felt like those were all kind of important reasons to consider it. I did include in the letter that I wrote you photographs of all the nearby properties that have that kind of door. I found at least 2 on my street that have that kind of door. I gave you a map of where they're all located. And also just looking at my street, there's about 22 homes going up the street, and 10 of them are some form of contemporary. So this board already decided that the contemporary architecture of my house was consistent with the neighborhood, and so the garage door just is building on that theme. So I know it's easy to think that everything up there is red tile, Spanish style houses, but there are some, of course, that are red tile, but they're hardly Spanish style. They're contemporary, and there's other ones that are true out, flat out contemporary, including some of the most contemporary houses in Santa Barbara. At the top of Via Alicia, there's one that looks like a big arc that's probably quite famous for its construction, and there's one being built on Nicholas Lane that's in the county, but it's right there, a very contemporary one as well. So I think the consistency, the neighborhood, the lighting, I think there's a lot of reasons that you might consider approving it. This is roughly what it looks like. Ours would be black because our windows are black anodized, but it would match.
And pardon my interruption, if you could put that underneath the camera, and if I can ask City TV to direct the camera.
When you're saying black, you're talking about the border.
Yes, the
framework.
borders would be black. Sorry, this is really black.
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Someone was in here watching TV.
So,
Sorry about that.
There we go.
So that's pretty much my presentation on the glass door. Should we talk about that and then go to the glass railing, or do you want me to talk and do everything?
Just do your whole presentation.
Just do your presentation.
Okay.
Because I'm not too clear exactly what's going on here, but I get your argument about a glass door with so I'm,
So the glass door issue was that we went to consent after final.
and
We
they
were
said-
told that we couldn't have that for some of the reasons that I just discussed, and this gave me the opportunity to discuss why I think there's reasons to consider that it's consistent with the neighborhood, which was one of the major things, that there are ones like it on the street, that there are a lot of contemporary houses, that the daylighting is important, that the
Yes.
street light trumps any light that comes out of it, and we're subject to Title 24.
Don't use Trump.
I did that pretty well. So those are all the reasons.
Okay.
So I'll move on to the glass guardrail. So on the back of our house, and I don't know whether you have the plans up, but
I'll go to the site plan right now.
Okay.
It's, if you can go back to the screen with the plans, right here in front of a patio, there's a wall with we're proposing an 18-inch high glass portion above it. And then on the elevation, you can see that little section right there.
Could you possibly zoom in?
Is it a dynamic zoom? No, let's see.
you had the south elevation for a second there.
There it is. Hold on. Right in here, there's that little piece, and it's, I think it's okay. Then on zooming back out, on this site plan, I can show you again where that is. It's right in the front here, in front of that patio, at the edge of the pool. Infinity Edge takes over, but it's this small portion in front there. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay. So the glass guardrail, as I think you probably understand, is an 18-inch guardrail standing on top of a 24-inch wall. So it's pretty small. It's 60% smaller than your typical 42-inch glass guardrail. One of the issues I was told at that meeting is that this board has taken the position that glass guardrails on the hillsides were not considered ideal because they could be reflective and they could cause a glare. And I understand that. I did a little research on it. I looked at some of the things that do cause glare. This is the solar panels across from the house I live at in Goleta right now, the apartments I live at. This is the Wells Fargo building downtown that shined into my hotel room one day. You know, this is really reflective mirror glass. This one is actually one of the windows installed in my house that is just low E, double paned, kind of run-of-the-mill windows, and there's a perfect reflection of the ocean and the trees in the background. The argument that I wanted to make was that I don't know that there's been any study that says that people's glass guard railings is causing this issue. The glass that's in that window in my house, while it's nothing special, it is what we're all using, and it has lots of coatings on it, low E coatings, it's double paned. It is highly reflective. There's just no two ways about it. And that's what we have to put in. We don't have a choice on that. And the reflections that you're seeing in places easily could be those kinds of windows. People who face the sun, and I've been in houses on the Riviera who face sunset and they burn up in the afternoon. A lot of them have put reflective coatings on their windows aftermarket. You can buy reflective windows or coatings just like they have on the Wells Fargo building. Solar panels was a surprise to me, but I caught that glare one day. And they caused a huge glare. So there's a lot of things that could be causing it that aren't this glass railing. I meant to bring in a sample of the glass railing, which I didn't bring with me, but we're using a low iron glass. So it's very light transmissible compared to the kinds of glass we have here. If you've been in houses that have modern windows, which I'm sure you all have, you notice that it's darker inside, usually. Unless somebody uses really expensive low iron glass for everything, but your typical kind of run-of-the-mill double pane windows do reduce the amount of light that comes into the house. So anyway, I took a picture of the low iron glass next to the window at my house to try to show the difference in reflectivity. And you can still see the ocean in the low iron glass, but it's pretty minimal in comparison. I also took this picture of a house that was built in the last couple years next to my house that has all glass railings. I'm not here to talk about the architecture, but I do want to point out that the reflections that you see here are redundant to the reflections of the glass behind it. If you look at, there are little spots that are reflective, but it's right where the glass windows are that are behind it. So I have multiple arguments, but one is that my glass that we're proposing, this 18 inches of glass, is redundant to the windows that are behind it. We have huge windows behind it that are reflective. I can't really do anything about that. But this isn't going to add to that. And it's only 18 inches, much smaller than any glass railings that you've been trying to eliminate. And lastly, I'd ask that you consider, in the long run, you might want to actually do a study and find out where those reflections are coming from. I've seen them, and I've tried to figure out where they're coming from, but having been in plenty of houses on the Riviera, I suspect they're coming from highly coated windows or big solar arrays or something like that. A small 18-inch glass guardrail, I don't think is really the source of the problem here. In the case of the house there, I actually think it gives it a nice clean look. I'm not asking for that kind of railing, that much railing, but I think it actually is really attractive, and probably more attractive on a little more contemporary house. But I think those are kind of the main reasons that I wanted to go over. I did just make a little summary of the reasons for the garage door and the glass railings that you might find handy to have a copy of in front of you as you discuss it. But I think, and here's a set of pictures if anybody. There's a set of pictures if you want a set of pictures.
I must say, bring up the thought of a good excuse to have a subcommittee. You might get a call. Better be careful.
I wasn't aware that I was auditioning for that. I'm trying not to.
Surprise!
Never know when you're
This is a volunteer group. That's what we.
I saw you hide under the desk a few minutes ago.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, is that it?
I think that's it. I really wanted to just express all of that and respectfully present it to you. I know that you've already, made a decision at that time, and I'm asking you to have an open mind and hear all the things that we just talked about now. And I know you were involved, although I don't think I saw you on the screen, so I don't know how that works. But like I said, I'm not good at Zoom meetings. But I'm hoping you can, reconsider what your thought process was together with the full board.
So, yeah, I appreciate your presentation. I'd have to say, since I've probably been on the board the longest, what happens on boards like this is frequently, and I actually know where this all originated, was from a previous board member named Bernie, and she was very adamant against garage doors that were translucent and glass railings. And it sort of set a precedent in her determination that that would never come, and it sort of left a mark on this board. So, it's important that people bring in evidence or arguments suggesting that, well, perhaps that direction was not necessarily accurate. And I think that's where it kind of came from. So it's the determination of the board, of course, but that kind of, I think, underscores where that came from in terms of that prejudice against that style. So anyway, enough of that said.
So public comment, if you could open up
Yeah,
public
do we
comment.
have any public comment on this project, please?
I do not see anyone with their hand raised on Zoom, and we do not have any submittals for public comment on this item. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions, so I'll just go down the list. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
Did you bring any pictures in of surrounding residences' garages?
Yeah, they're in the letter that I wrote to you guys, which,
The older
again,
letter.
you may or may not have gotten it, but here's the survey of everybody I talked to, and here's pictures and addresses of all the garage doors.
Okay.
So they're all virtually identical, certainly the same flavor.
Do you only include in that similar garages, or is that survey comprehensive for the area around your house of all garage doors, or just the ones
So
that
the most,
support your case?
the most common garage door, I'll tell you, and you'll be interested maybe to know this, is that super cheap aluminum.
The old
fake-
ribbed aluminum?
Fake wood impressed roll-up door.
Okay.
That is the most common, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to use one of those. So if we're going to go with the most common, that's not what I want.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to get a sense
You're welcome to
of
look at
what's
this or
around.
have it.
That'd be great to refer to. That's the only question I had.
All right, Board Member Ari Colleen.
No questions.
Board Member Brentlinger.
Just one question for you, Mr. Trent. The 18-inch wall that you're talking about in glass, what is it facing? Can you tell me?
So if you were,
orient me?
do I have to touch something? No. If you were standing on that patio, you'd be facing south. And so you'd be looking out towards the ocean.
Oh, okay, so down slope from your house then?
Right.
Okay.
The house isn't terribly visible from a lot of places because of the way the slope is and the other houses and landscaping.
Right.
So there are places, of course, you can see the house from, but it's not like, that visible, especially that bottom lower level of the house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
All right, and I don't have any questions either. You're pretty thorough, so I'll bring it back to comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I guess I'll just offer up some background to this. In hindsight, and I can appreciate the fact that you've come back, thank you for doing that. There was part of me when Ms. Klein and I were reviewing this that just wondered, if I should just refer it to the full board. And it was such a small item that I didn't really want to do that and monkey up the full board's time. But I thought that the subject matter was relevant for a discussion for the whole board. So I think it's great that you brought it back. So thank you for doing that. In terms of a couple of the items that you've brought up, I think that there are a couple of things that you brought up that we don't have any control over, right? So we don't have any control over this. This is a state mandated thing, and we have absolutely no jurisdiction over that. So this is also the bane of my existence. I'm sure you don't, nobody wants to see that going around town, right? I mean, it's great. We need all sorts of energies opportunities and sources, but that's an unfortunate result of it. This is a really great example for, I think, one of the conversations that would surround this. I'll point to this. The difference in my mind here is that the primary windows in the residence are shaded at full sun. And really, from a good design standpoint, anything south-facing on the Riviera would be shaded at high noon or the middle part of the day so that we wouldn't have a glare off of that. When you pull the guardrails forward, that's when you get the glare. So I just wanted to make that distinction, at least in terms of what the distinction that's in my mind. I did not feel comfortable at the time the decision was made to allow glass railing on a residence that didn't have any. It is at the lower level of the house, but it's incongruent with the rest of what was approved by the full board for the project. And so I felt the consistency was important, and given that it was on consent, that was the decision that was made. I recall driving around the neighborhood, and I do not recall seeing this many garages like this. So maybe I was driving too quickly, maybe I wasn't looking closely enough, or maybe I just saw a lot of those pretty pressed wood aluminum doors that we all grew up with. The decision about the garage door in my mind was less in some ways about light emission than it was about neighborhood compatibility, because I just didn't feel like that was the majority of garage doors that I had seen in the neighborhood, if I'm recalling this project properly. So just some rationale in terms of where that was going in my mind. So those are my only comments. I don't really have any specific comments about what's in front of us right now, but just to provide some background.
Very good. All right, Board Member Ari Kalian, do you have any comments?
I do. So I'm on page 35C of our guidelines under glass material. I just wanted to read a sentence that as I'm trying to think of my decision, and it states here, the use of glass railings as guardrails or as windscreens is not the preferred material at highly visible locations due to the possible glare associated with these types of installations. I believe the location of the guardrail, since it's at the lower floor, I believe that the location makes the use of the railing much more appropriate than if it were from street view. So I think depending on what the other board members say, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not totally opposed to it. In terms of the garage door, I did drive by the property, and I believe that the previous motion from consent, where it stated, using translucent lights only in the top 2 feet of the door, I would stand by that statement and only suggest that. Just due to neighborhood compatibility. And those are my comments. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any comments, please?
I do, thank you. I appreciate all the work you put into presenting this, first of all. It's very helpful. I think in particular the feedback from the neighbors that you were able to speak with was helpful, and describing what is viewable by your neighbors in terms of the garage door was also very helpful. So I think, we have guidelines, but I think that, ultimately the facts guide us in a lot of our answers. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I think like we've all stated, looking at each project differently. You know, it's very nuanced, but we have to look at the guidelines. We don't want to set a precedent. So I think we were looking at the architectural style. There was no glass before. But with that said, it's about coming here with a case and looking at the guidelines. And I think you did a great job of that, and a lot of work went behind that. In regards to the garage door, you know, you spoke to your neighbors. What's the visibility there? Compatibility through the neighborhood, showing that is a big part of it. And then the environmental reasoning as well, as far as the daylighting. And then as far as the 18-inch of glass, that isn't a full size, so that is a little nuanced there as well. So those are my comments.
I don't think I could follow. That's very well said. So I'm not too clear exactly what kind of motion I just approve the railing and the garage door. Is that what you're up for?
Those are the two elements that the applicant is requesting review on. So it's still normal. You still need to do the neighborhood preservation findings and the hillside design district findings and the slope lot findings. So you'd have to, should you approve, you'll need to respond to both of those elements and in some way and be able to make those findings.
Okay.
Chair Miller?
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion,
Okay.
but before I do, I kind of wanted the opinion of the board regarding the garage door and what everyone's standing is in order for me to.
Do you want a quick vote, or do you want people's comments about their feelings of the garage door? Or what do you,
A quick vote.
so, okay, well, present your motion, I guess.
Okay, sure. I would like to make a motion for project design approval and, or just a moment here.
And final.
And final approval.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one moment.
Yeah, take your time.
Just a suggestion, since the full motion is pretty long, is it appropriate just to do a straw vote on the single issue of the garage?
That's what I was requesting,
Okay.
but I'll just make a motion.
Well, as a suggestion, if you want to just propose a straw vote for if the board finds the garage acceptable as submitted, we could do that briefly before you construct your motion.
I would like that.
When you're saying acceptable by, you mean the one that this one with the black?
Yes, so
Right.
the board can do a quick straw vote on
I
that.
would like that.
Okay, I will make a vote for those that can support the glass garage door that is submitted. Could you please raise your hands? I think I can support it because it's not seen from the street, correct? It's like not even seen, so I can support it. Okay.
Okay, great. So I would like to make a motion for project design approval and final approval with the following comments. The board generally believes the proposed garage door, all-glass garage door is aesthetically appropriate and compatible with the neighborhood. And the proposed 18-inch glass guardrail is aesthetically appropriate.
And I'll go through the findings. When you're making the findings, could you also cite specific areas where you find the project meets the finding?
Sure.
Like the unusual circumstances surrounding why we are.
Neighborhood preservation findings. The proposed development is consistent with the scenic character of the city, and the proposed garage door and glass railings will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. The proposed development is compatible with the neighborhood in its size, bulk, and scale. In particularly, the size of the glass railing being only 18 inches in height is generally believed to be appropriate to the site in the neighborhood. The proposed buildings, the proposed railings and the door is designed with quality architectural materials. the proposed project does not include the removal or impact any specific trees noted. Public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected and preserved. Project generally complies with good neighborhood guidelines, particularly with the glass railing and the glass garage door in terms of lighting. The development, including proposed structures and grading, preserves significant public scenic views of and from the hillside.
Okay,
Oh, got it. Hillside design, still flat findings. The development, including the proposed structures and grading, is appropriate to the site and designed to avoid visible scarring. The development maintains a scale and form that blends with the hillside by minimizing the visual appearance of the structure.
all right, thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Would the maker of the motion, could we go back to the very first general finding? I'd kind of like to reword it a little bit. What was item A? The consistent spirit, the proposed development is consistent with the scenic character of the city, and that the guardrail and the garage door do not cause any kind of inconsistency with the appearance of the neighborhood. I'd like to reword it that way. Is that okay with the maker of the motion?
Yes, that's okay.
All right, thank you.
And I'll second again.
All right, thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colas,
No.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And Mr. Chair, if you could just announce the 10-day appeal process.
And there's a 10-day appeal period for this project.
It's actually in the shade, just
Um,
FYI. So those
And
two,
if
they
I could
do
ask the
mirror
applicant to,
regardless.
leave copies for the public record.
They want you to leave these
One
copies for the public record.
It is much nicer as chocolate.
Board Member,
One copy.
Okay,
Board
just
Member
the pictures?
Colas, could she start?
Give you that too.
State why she opposed the, Board Member Colas? Vice Chair Colas, could you state
Yes.
exactly what was the negative for
Yeah.
opposing?
I can support the glass guardrail because it's on the, it's effectively at the toe of the slope, and I think that it is well screened from parcels below it. But I have an issue with the garage door. I think that the previous motion that was made on consent calendar allowed for adequate light emission into the garage space from the outdoors during daylight. And based on my survey of the neighborhood, I felt that the motion that was made on consent would have resulted in a more compatible garage door with the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 2, 2345 Skyline Way. This is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. This is a proposal for an interior remodel of an existing 1,473 square foot single unit residence with a 427 square foot garage located in the Hillside Design District. Exterior improvements include new siding, replacing the existing composition single roof with a standing seam metal roof, a new fireplace, new door and window alterations, a new garage door, and a new 342 square foot deck at the rear of the property. Project design approval and final approval are requested. Neighborhood preservation findings in Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. Project was last reviewed on consent and continued to the full board. Do we have minutes from June 6th? And I just want to say, I remember reviewing this board, and my feeling there's so much of a architectural change to the house, I didn't feel comfortable unilaterally approving or disapproving of it, so I wanted it to go before the full board. I just wanted to put that on the record.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Here are the minutes I've pulled up on the screen, and that is, your comment is now as consistent with the comment that you made at the meeting that the proposed style is too much of a change. The chair does not feel comfortable reviewing at the consent level.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and present your project, that'd be great.
Steve Wilson, agent for the owners, Steve and Pam Hirsch. So this project is basically a interior-only remodel of Alta Mesa House. And it's pretty straightforward. We're changing the style from kind of a ranch style that you see in that neighborhood to a more contemporary look. This is, let's see, you're not going to see these. This is the house from the front. There's quite a lot of trees and vegetation. This is across the street, so there's no one directly across from them. This is the neighboring property. So this is the subject property right there. And there's really no one, there's only, this is the only house on this side of the street. It's Skyline Way, it's super steep, goes up to Skyline Circle. And then I'll just jump right into the design. So this is our site plan. Site survey. There's a proposed deck that we've got out here to capture a little ocean view. Existing floor plan proposed. These are the existing elevations shown without any trees. And then what we're basically doing is chopping the eaves off of it, giving it a more contemporary look, doing a standing seam metal roof, new stucco, exterior smooth coat, integral color, and glass garage door. And some new glazing on the south side. And building section, and yeah. That's what I've got.
All right, thank you. Did we get any public comment?
I do not see anyone's hand raised at this time on Zoom, and we did not receive any public comment on this particular item. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kloss, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah, I do. So I'm a little bit confused by this as an interior-only remodel, but then we have glazing changes, roofing changes, a
There's
garage
just-
door change, and stucco changes. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, there's just no additional square footage.
Okay.
So we're remodeling, reconfiguring the interior, but the footprint remains the same.
Okay, so it's an interior remodel and exterior remodel with no increase in square footage?
Correct.
Okay, great. Can you show us, do you have a little bit more of a macroscopic map that shows us exactly where on Skyline this is, or how it relates a little bit more to the neighborhood?
I've got this.
Because part of Skyline kind of loops back, and then it kind of faces the backside
Right.
of town, and then the other part sort of faces like Cliff Drive, that it's a little
Right.
bit different.
So this is probably the best I can do right now,
Mm-hmm.
but this is Flor Vista,
Okay,
and pretty much at the crest of Flor Vista is just beyond. This is Skyline Way.
Yep.
That kind of does a little S up to Skyline
Goes up
Circle.
to the-
That would be up here.
okay,
So this house fronts Flor Vista. This is my client's property, which is fronting Skyline Way, and this is the only house that's on this side, the south side of Skyline Way. And then
Okay.
there's 3 houses on the north side of Skyline Way.
okay.
And it's quite steep as you go up
Okay.
there.
And can you tell me a little bit about the vegetation that would be on the, I'll call it the south property line, the one that's running diagonal on the sheet?
This one,
Yes.
there's quite a few really large eucalyptus trees. In fact, when you're on the property, it's really difficult to even see any of these homes, which are actually on Litchfield Court.
Okay,
Yeah,
those are the only questions I have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
no problem.
All right, Board Member Eric Kalian, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions, please?
I do, thank you. Mr. Wilson, on this same slide, could you explain to me what is exactly across that same long diagonal property line? Looks like down
Right.
below, like a pool and a play structure or something? What's that?
To be honest, I don't really know. This is not a pool, this is like a little shed. So
Okay.
I've walked around, and there is pretty thick vegetation, but it's almost like a little ravine that winds through here. But this is the neighboring property's shed and trees and things of that nature.
Okay, so, the reason I bring that up is that we didn't really comment on the deck, the new deck that's
Right.
going on the house. Do you have any information on how that relates to the neighbors?
Yes. So this is the area of the deck here. And what happens on the property is it starts to taper off. This is all flat, this hardscape area, and then there's a grassy area right here, and then it tapers down quickly. So this area is not really usable. There's currently some railroad tie steps that go down to a little brick patio down below. So what we're trying to do is expand the usable space at this grade level. And then I've got a drawing, an elevation drawing of that as well.
Great.
Here we go.
So that's a freestanding deck, right?
Correct. This is sort of what you see if you're cutting right in front of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what we're looking at there on the bottom of that drawing is trying to figure out which side we're looking at. Is that's
It's-
not really,
This is kind of like the section
oh, that's the
that
section
I'm cutting
there.
through, looking,
Okay. I see.
north.
Okay. Great, now I get it.
Okay.
And then, did you have a color board that went with your
Yes.
presentation?
Where would I find that?
The tabs at the top of the.
Oh, did you already have it?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of the idea of the railing, wood post, cable rail, standing seam metal roof. There's our exterior lighting, bronze anodized doors, and kind of an integral color stucco. This would be the deck material.
Okay, and the standing seam metal roof looks like it's a flat mat, is that correct? Or how would you describe the glossiness of that?
The color?
Or not the color so much
The
as
finish.
the finish.
It's a flat, I mean, it's not totally flat, but it's like a relatively flat.
Okay.
I could bring in a color sample too, but
Okay,
yeah.
all right. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay.
Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
Are you removing any existing vegetation or trees?
No.
And then my other question would be, as far as compatibility with the neighborhood, would you say that there's other homes that are similar?
Yes, in fact, at the top of Skyline Way, right when you hit Skyline Circle, is a really modern, almost 3-story house. I've got some images of that if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Oh, you have all this stuff open for me. Yeah, it's an old Shubin Donaldson. These are some garage door. Oh, here we go. This is kind of like neighborhood context. So this is right when you're driving up Skyline Way. This is what you hit at the top of Skyline Circle. So really contemporary. And then these are some other homes in the immediate neighborhood. This is on Skyline Way. This is on Litchfield with a standing seam metal roof. And then this is on Skyline as well. So it's just really eclectic neighborhood. It's kind of campy up in here. A lot of old homes, some newer ones, some people doing work on them, that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Great, thanks. Those are all my questions.
No problem.
Do you have like a location of where these specific homes are in the neighborhood? or do you
I
just-
don't have like a
Okay.
map or anything.
And the height of that deck on the back, and I didn't realize that when I first reviewed it, and is the property behind it lower or higher or the same level as? And is there vegetation kind of masking it, or?
Yeah, you can see on the site plan here. So there's a bunch of really large trees, and so you're not impacting this neighbor at all, which is the one that fronts Flora Vista, and this one, it's also got some large palm trees and eucalyptus here, so it's not looming over them at all. there's quite a bit of open space.
Is there some kind of hedges on the property line in the back there?
On here,
No, the up on the,
on this side,
yes.
it's really dense vegetation. Yeah, it's actually probably more on the client's property,
Okay.
but right along that property line, there's a lot of eucalyptus and thick vegetation.
All right, well, those are my only questions, so I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Generally speaking, I don't have an issue with, anything that I'm seeing on the house proper. The large expanses of glass that are on the south-facing facade, it kind of goes back to the last conversation that we had before you. You're clipping eaves, that's south-facing, and so it begs a question in my mind whether that's going to create a lot of glare. If there is sufficient screening, then I think that's less of an issue. That being from, let's say, Cliff Drive, or from Flora Vista as you're ascending Flora Vista, or the neighbor below you, which is sort of above and to the right on the page right now. Yeah, it would be the two parcels. Yes, exactly.
These two are actually on Litchfield Lane.
Okay.
And so the houses are on a totally different street, and they're oriented the opposite way. But not
But
to say
they're-
that you couldn't see it.
Those are like the triangular one where you have a cursor right now, that is generally lower than this subject parcel, is it not?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just a comment about that. From the garage doors that you've shown me, I would tend to say that a garage door that is paneled is fine. But again, I would say that the upper 1 or 2 rows could be glazing, and that would be sufficient, and I think it would be more compatible with the neighborhood based on what you just showed us. I'm concerned about how the deck relates to topography and our hillside guidelines. All of a sudden we have this deck that's kind of on stilts, and it doesn't really feel like it's stepping down with topography. So I would be interested to know what the other board members think about that. I think the color palette's nice. And I think the fact that you're retraining as much vegetation as possible is great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Kayleen, do you have any comments, please?
I do. I believe quality architectural materials are being proposed here. I believe they're all aesthetically appropriate. I believe the proposed colors are also aesthetically appropriate. The pewter colored stucco, like earth neutral tones. Similar to Vice Chair Colossus' comments, the lights on the top, on the first 1 or 2 rows would be more aesthetically appropriate. I did drive by this property and believe that would be more compatible with the neighborhood. I'm on sheet A201. So I'm looking at like view 1 versus view 3, and I'm just trying to better understand the rhythm of the glazing between the front and the back. And I believe the proportions of the glazing in the back just don't really go well with the glazing patterns in the front. I mean, I in terms of the 3-panel door system, I just feel like you're just maximizing as much space as possible. It's very close to the adjacent window on the right when I'm looking at view 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, these wrap, so there's glazing that turns this corner to here.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, the transom window, it's it's very, very close to the edge there. And I mean, to me, I just feel like it just speaks different compared to the front of the house, and I just would like it to be a little bit more consistent with all four sides. Aside from that, no other comments, thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brent Lear.
What I have is actually more of a question. Can I regress here for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, on the dark bronze glass on, you know, apropos of the discussion we just had, or on the windows on the back and the sliding doors in particular, what are the reflective qualities of the dark bronze glass?
Dark bronze is the frame color.
So the glass itself is
It would just be a low-E.
just the
like
low
to
E?
meet the Title 24 requirements.
Okay, great. So I would agree with what has been said before. I'm still a little puzzled by the decking here.
Okay.
It's so, it is part of the hillside. It's right on the property line, or appears to be pretty close to it. I don't know how close it is. But it's just a bit of an oddity, I guess. And I'm not sure it fits with the hillside design guidelines.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I think what's proposed is aesthetically appropriate for the neighborhood. It is eclectic neighborhood, and the materials are high quality and seem to fit. And there is also significant vegetation and screening, which also helps. I agree with everything else that was said. Regarding the deck, it does feel a little large in height, so if it could be stepped down. Just a quick follow-up question, what is the use of the deck intended for?
It's just to expand the usable yard in the rear, and that's really where they have their ocean view. So they get a little ocean view when you're on this patio, but stepping out here really opens it up for them. They just want to maximize that if possible.
Got it. And then just another quick follow-up. Are you gonna plant any new plants down there at all?
We
On the
aren't
slope?
proposing anything at
Okay.
the moment, no.
Great. Those are my questions and comments.
Thank you.
Okay. The reason I brought it to the full board, I was very uncomfortable because the style was such a change. I'm still uncomfortable because to be honest, I didn't go in the neighborhood, so I don't know how eclectic it is. So I don't know if I'm a fair judge of that. So I'm going to have to kind of relate to my my other board members in terms of your comfort. But one of the critical things is to, the neighborhood, like your adjacent homes, how does it blend in with the existing neighborhood? Because that's a huge criteria of this board is neighborhood compatibility. So you are introducing a different style to the house and a different look. So doing that, is it compatible with the neighborhood? That being said, it's one story, so you're not adding a second story. You're not altering the landscaping. I do know back in the good old days, this wouldn't even have gone before a board because it's a single story remodel. So
Almost didn't have to go now.
there you go. So and to Board Member Colossus' concern about the glazing, that as in an aesthetic point of view, I don't know if it makes any difference because no one sees it. It's all in the back. So it's so I guess my big concern right now would be that deck in the back. That I'd like to see more information about that, more detailing, and to feel a little more comfortable in terms of privacy issues with that deck with the adjacent neighborhoods. So if you could come back kind of with a site section and some better photography of the neighborhood in the back where that deck is.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful. And those are my comments. So with that, I think we're going to have to bring it back for another review, but if someone would like to make a motion.
Full board or consent? Or maybe we should wait.
Should I just make a motion, see what happens?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for project design approval to return to consent for final with the following findings: that the project is aesthetically appropriate with the neighborhood. Is compatible in size, bulk, and scale. Quality architectural materials are being used. No trees are being removed. The public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected. The good neighbor guidelines regarding privacy, landscaping, and noise and lighting are being followed as there's significant planting around the property, and no public views are being impacted. And I'd like to add that we'd like more pictures of where the deck is going in that privacy area when you come back. And that the project also fits within the natural topography of the site, with the condition that we would like to look at the deck once again when it comes back, and that the development maintains a scale and form that blends within the hillside as far as the general residence, and we'd like to just review the deck when it comes back.
All right, do I have a second?
I'd like to second the motion, but I'm struggling to do that because I think as part of project design approval, we need to be able to make the compatibility or the hillside findings, and I don't think I can do that based on page 51H of the guidelines, which is natural surroundings. And there's this. Maybe I'll stick this on the screen. This is specifically the item that I'm concerned about us being able to make a finding for. So I'm supportive of making those findings for the house, but if the deck is part of the motion, I don't know that I can second that.
If I change it to full board, would that, or do you want me to just not give it any project design approval?
Paul, I think the way you were commenting was like we just wanted to look at it. It wasn't like we'd like to assure that the deck doesn't cause any well, how would you word it?
We're conjecturing about a motion that's on the table, which is a little odd. So maybe I'll second the motion and then attempt to make a request of you. Would that be okay? Okay, so I'm going to second the motion for project design approval. And I would like to request of the maker of the motion that we amend it to direct the applicant to consider alternative design options, or to return to the board with alternative design options for the deck area. So we're looking for something that relates more to topography, and maybe it's an on-grade situation since the property is above the parcels below it. I think they'll still be able to get a view out of the ocean, but that maybe it's an on-grade patio condition or something that's hunkered down into the hillside a little bit more.
I'll accept. To clarify, is it okay that it comes back for consent and it has project design approval?
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Great.
So just to clarify, the motion is that the project receives project design approval and continued consent for full approval with the findings that the board finds the neighborhood preservation ordinance findings and hillside and slope lot findings have been met, but that the applicant should return with an alternative design for the deck.
Yeah, I think we could say that they've been met for the home, but that we don't know that they've been met for the deck, and that's why we're asking them to return.
I just want to clarify that we.
Mr. Chair, through you. So I don't think we can't really separate PDA out, for project design approval out for the home and for the deck.
Okay.
So should this board grant project design approval, there's still,
Okay, so-
it still would have to come, like, based on your motion, it would need to come back only for final approval with the comments that you had suggested. Should
So
that
her
be-
motion said come back for final, so we can't grant it final approval until we get that deck issue resolved.
Well,
Correct.
I don't know that you can grant it project design approval because the neighborhood preservation findings and hillside findings must be met to grant it
Yeah, so they're not
project
met
design
yet, so
approval.
that's-
Yeah.
okay.
So I would recommend just continuing the item and not granting it project design approval today, unfortunately. And if you feel comfortable continuing to consent with the comment to return with an alternative deck design, you can continue it to consent for project design and final, if that's amenable.
Yes, okay. So I'll rephrase the motion to come back indefinitely to consent with our previous comments that were made.
Yeah.
So no PDA or final. It'll come back for PDA and final.
That's fine.
I'll second that.
Okay, are we comfortable with that, the city of Santa Barbara?
So one other question is maybe more for the applicant of if we could get this back and, you know, what kind of timing, if we could continue it for 2 weeks, because this project has been deemed complete, so we have a clock that starts, so we can't, my preference would be to continue, you know, we do consent meetings every week, so we could continue it if the motion maker is comfortable and the applicant's comfortable to continue it 2 weeks or a month, but again, our clock has started, so that's just, I'm conscious of
Sure your
time.
client wants to get this.
We want to keep it moving, so 2 weeks is fine.
Okay. So if perhaps the motion maker would add that it's continued 2 weeks to consent, that would satisfy.
Yes, it's continued 2 weeks to consent.
And the seconder agrees with that. So,
Yes, second that.
thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
No.
Board Member Brentlinger,
No.
and Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Brentlinger, would you state why you're opposed?
Yeah, I just don't see how the deck can be solved. And even, so I just don't see how we can approve it, given the hillside design guidelines.
Thank you.
And for me, believe the glazing area, the glazing is not aesthetically appropriate and needs to be restudied.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
We'll
thank
see you in 2
guys.
weeks.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the next, does anyone need a break? Need a break? Okay, okay. So, moving on to item 3, we're at 3231 Laurel Canyon Drive. This is a new item for concept review. This is a proposal to construct a 603 square foot first floor addition and a 475 square foot basement addition to an existing 1,500 square foot single unit residence with a 347 square foot attached carport and 2 detached accessory buildings. Located in the Hillside Design District, project includes repair and expansion of an existing deck. The proposed total of 3,387 square feet on a 26,767 square foot lot is 71% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings in hillside design districts and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and show us your project.
Yes, my name is Tim Clordy. I'm the owner of 3231 Laurel Canyon. And I'd first like to just go over the location of the property. It's kind of an unusual location. It is above Foothill on Laurel Canyon, which is a dead-end street. This is the property here at the end of the dead-end street. To the east of the property is COMB, which is the Kachuma Operation Maintenance Board, run by the federal government. And then on the north side of the lot is this big open lot here, which is actually owned by the city, by the water department, Cater Treatment Plant is involved with that. And then the only actual residence that's adjacent to the property is this residence here. And just to note at this level, there is a lot of growth material, hedging and trees, and then there's the driveway adjacent to the property line, and then their garage is present here, and then their living quarters is on this side. So their living quarters is quite away from our property. The addition is on the back of the house, This is the existing house here, which has a large existing deck. This is the room addition in this area here. And, oops. This is the backside of the property. You can see, and this is the addition here, which is at the same single level of the original house. And there is a little bit of a slope, and so there is an area for a small basement underneath that area. And then this is the area which faces the only neighbor, which is really adjacent to the property. The building materials, the roof is present, or actually all the building materials are going to remain the same. The roof is a standing seam metal roof, which is this color here, which is a weathered copper. The gutters and downspouts are real copper. And the coloration will remain the same as it is now. There's a green and red highlights, and in the base of the base color is this kind of gray material here. The windows and doors are straight grain Douglas fir with a clear finish, and the deck railing is made out of Ipe, and then the railings are actually copper piping. So. And the one other thing is actually the lighting. The only lighting will be sconces on the back of the house, near the doors, here and here, and here and here. And they'll be down-facing sconce lighting. There will be no trees or brush removed from this area. To note, in the back of the property, it's a very large piece of property, and the whole back of the property is just filled with oak trees, just numerous oak trees, some pine trees, and very heavily vegetated. And then it is a bit of a canyon, and this is like the low point of the canyon, and it slopes up, and this is the empty lot that the city owns. So the building structure here is quite concealed from any neighbors, and I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Did we get any public comment?
I do not see anyone with a raised hand for Zoom, and I do not have any public comment for this particular item. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any questions, please?
Can we just take a look at the exterior elevations real quickly? Just want to make sure I'm understanding where the actual addition is taking place.
So this is the back side of the house, and the room addition is this area right here.
Okay, and can you point to where that starts and stops on the elevation that's below that one, please?
Yes. Right at this level here.
Okay, so it starts roughly where your existing chimney is?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, I've gotten confused on this. So, ask that question again, the second one? So this is the posterior view. Oh, actually, so it's this side here. So this is the side that is facing the neighbor, and it's where the room addition is. So this is the new part of the room addition, and the siding will be lap siding, hardy lap siding, and this is the existing, which is stucco. And then the lower level will be the shingle hardy siding,
Okay.
cement board.
Okay, I have one more question. It looks like the roof line on the addition has sort of a bow to it.
It
It looks like the
it's
ridge beam is extending out further than the fascia breaks back.
The ridge beam does not stand out. Let me show you actually the existing. There we go.
I'm just wondering if that's something different or if that
No.
exists on the house
It'll be
elsewhere.
the same way it is now. This is to the side of the house,
Okay,
and there is a beam here, but it goes and it's hidden underneath the large eave.
okay,
So it'll be exactly like that.
okay. Those were the only questions I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Kayleen.
I do. Just one question. So there's the three materials being used. There's the shingle siding, board siding, stucco. Can you tell me a little bit more about, why you selected, these three, how they all talk to each other? Just trying to better understand.
Yeah, I think it, I think it fits with the arts and crafts, craftsman style architecture where you have a mixture of lap siding and shingle siding. I'm a big fan of the craftsman architecture, and they often used stucco, actually they used gunite type material. So I think actually those three fit really well into the craftsman style architecture.
Well, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the same page here. I wonder if you could show on a site plan, or if you've got a site plan, so I know where the stairs go, actually.
Right here. So this is the existing deck and also the final deck with
Right.
some decking here. And the steps come down this way, down to the lower level
The lower level of,
of the property. It is,
so it's just open ground?
Yes.
Is that right?
yes.
Okay, so.
This whole area, actually, you can see the existing stairs here. And you can see this, there is a slope that goes down to this very flat area
Okay,
here.
all right, that's what I was trying to figure out. Great, and then back to the materials that we were looking at before on, what is it, A 3.0,
Sorry.
right there?
Yep.
The materials then underneath the stair railings to the left, keep going, yeah, that's just all block of some kind?
No, that's the hardy siding.
That is hardy
Yeah.
siding.
So
Okay.
the ground does slope down here, and
Yeah.
so there is a space here, but for fire reasons, we actually have to block this off all the way down to the ground.
Okay,
And that's actually what is present now, is that everything below the deck is the hardy sheeple siding.
got it.
So the only new material actually adding is the lap siding.
Okay, all right, I think that's it, thank you.
All right, Board Member Klein.
No
Okay.
questions.
I don't think I have any questions either, so I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Colossi, do you have a comment, please?
Yeah, I think this is a nice little project. I don't think it's going to have a significant impact at all on the neighborhood. I would like to see maybe a little bit more regularity in terms of the fenestration on the backside, but I'm sure that's being driven by interior uses, and I don't think it'll be visible by anybody, so I don't have any significant concerns about that, and I feel like all the exterior materials are compatible with the existing home. So I'm in support of the project.
All right, thank you. Board Member Ari Kaling, do you have any comments, please?
I do. I believe quality architectural materials are being used. I did drive by the property, and it's pretty tucked down. It's pretty hard to spot this, but I believe it's been well designed and aesthetically appropriate. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any comments, please?
I do, thank you. Yeah, I think I can support the project as well. I think that, well, just from a design standpoint, I think it's additive to the house and therefore the neighborhood. I think that in terms of I'm just looking at that northwest elevation that has attracted a lot of commentary, I think in part because of the change in materials, but I would also recognize that I think there's, in reality, it's not as different as it appears because of the way whatever program you're using highlights the different materials. You know, those hard borders of each shingle show up as very busy, but I think in reality they blend in much better than they might appear on the paper here. So, but I could support it.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, and I will highlight, the back of the property is completely filled with oak trees that extend far above the roof line. So there is no visibility from anywhere from the back, other than if you're down on the property and looking up.
Great, yeah, thank you.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
I would agree with the other board members. I think the project fits within the neighborhood and hillside guidelines.
I think, yeah, I see two different architectural styles here. I see the original 50s era, and you're putting in a California Craftsman, which is really nice, so but it's in the back, it's single story, and that swoopy thing is a very popular look from the 50s and 60s for tract houses, and I think it was inspired from those exotic houses from Tonga. There was a period of time where people were trying to mimic Polynesia, and yeah, the tiki thing, and they'd hang blowfish, and anyway, it was weird. It was a brief time, and then those restaurants were real popular too. It's funny how all this. So anyway, yeah, so I could support this project too. Would someone like to entertain a motion? They're here for, let's see, you're here for, I guess, project design approval and final approval. Is
No,
that-
the item is here for concept review, so
Concept
you can
review?
just
Oh.
continue indefinitely.
Oh, you're item 3. I was
I'll
reading
make
the
a
wrong.
motion.
Yeah, thank you.
The board generally finds the project to be compatible with the neighborhood, and we would like you to return to the full board at your convenience whenever you're ready. So indefinite continuance to the full board. And we would just ask that you would bring back a complete set of drawings with any lighting information. We already have colors, so I don't think we need that. Any changes to the landscaping that would need to be addressed, we'd ask that those would be articulated also in the set.
Additional, the lighting is shown on some of these in addition. It's just the sconces next to the window or next to the doors.
We would just want to see the sconces themselves and make sure that they're full cutoff.
Can I show you that now to get it out of the way?
You can, but our hands, just to let you know, our hands are tied. We can't make any further level of approval beyond consent because that's how you've been agendized.
Right, other than you can look at it and say, no, that's not going to pass, and I can find something else.
Sure, we can take a look at it for you. That's my motion.
All right, thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, have a roll call, please.
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you see that? Can we have a 5-minute break? I have a contractor that's sending me phone. There's some kind of crisis with one of my projects, and I need to address. So can we come back at 4:45? I guess. Yeah, 4:45. Sorry. the single-family design board for item number 4. This is 650 Rockwood Drive. This is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. Proposal to construct a new 3,430 square foot single-story, single-unit residence with a 500 square foot attached garage and a 767 square foot detached special accessory dwelling unit, ADU, on a vacant lot located on the Hillside Design District. Project includes a new pool, spa, and hardscape and landscape improvements throughout. The proposal total of 4,697 square feet on a 26,968 square foot lot is 99% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. Staff hearing officer approval for a front yard setback modification to allow an uncovered parking space for the ADU to be located within the 35-foot front setback was granted on June 15, 2022. Project design approval and final approval are requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. Project was last reviewed on April 11th, 2022. Do we have minutes from the previous meeting to speak into the record?
Apologies, Mr. Chair, I'm pulling those up now.
We don't need the typical findings, just if there were specific findings that we need to look at.
Are you looking for the meeting minutes from the staff hearing officer meeting or from the last SFTB meeting?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, no, the last meeting.
Both are available if you need it.
It might be helpful to have both, actually.
Both are available if you'd like to review both, but here to begin are the meeting minutes from the last SFDB meeting where it was continued to the staff hearing officer.
Okay.
So it was continued to the staff hearing officer with comments. The uncovered parking space located in the front setback is aesthetically appropriate. The low retaining wall is acceptable and there is significant screening at the property line. The permeable pavers for the parking space and to address stormwater are a great addition.
Okay.
And then here are the meeting minutes from the staff hearing officer meeting. The action was approve the front setback modification, making the findings as outlined in the staff report dated June 9th, 2022.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, attends the staff hearing officer minutes are pretty slim, and usually it comes with a long
Yeah.
list of conditions depending on the type of project that's involved,
So this-
if
okay.
there's any.
And perhaps the original SFDB, you had one or two comments, mostly positive, but there were a couple of things that you suggested that we have done, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, the original.
Okay, well, you could just bring that up in your presentation. That'd be great. Okay, I think that's it for the minutes. So if you could present your project.
Thank you for being here, Chair Miller, members of the board, staff. I'm Ken Radke with Blackbird Architects.
I'm Shauna Reeder, the owner of 650 Rockwood.
I'm Sam Mayfist, landscape architect.
Stefan Farmason with Blackbird Architects.
So last time we were here, you referred us forward to yourselves for design and final approval. You were pretty comfortable. The word that stuck with me from Member Colas was refreshing. There were two comments that you were really one main comment that you asked for us to address, which was the garage door. A good theme for today, apparently. And we have addressed that. There, since then there have been a few letters and so forth, and so they'll probably speak. But I just thought it would be good for you to meet Brooke ever so briefly and.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, if you could please speak into the microphone, just for members of the public attending.
Several pages. I'm Shauna Reeder. As Ken said, I'm here speaking on behalf of myself, my husband, Brooke, and our 5-year-old daughter, Kara. We are just thrilled to be here in Santa Barbara and have the privilege of raising our daughter here. We think that the warmth and the kindness of the community, as well as just the natural beauty that surrounds us, it just always impresses us. From the moment our daughter Kara ran into the pepper tree and disappeared into its branches on our property and came out 20 minutes later, dubbing it her bell spot, as in Beauty and the Beast bell, and then scrambled to the oak at the southwest corner of our property, climbing all of its branches. We just knew we were home, and we are so excited to present our project to you today. As mentioned last time when we spoke in November, I brought it up briefly, but this house is unique and this design is unique in that it is tailored to the needs of a complex and frankly devastating health condition. And it represents the better part of a decade of research and planning, trial and difficult error on the part of my family. A huge key element of what we're doing here is moisture management. You will see that in the design of the residence itself as well as in the site plan. Besides that, we relate very closely to the property. We love to walk the reservoir to the south. We love taking in the views of the mountains to the north. And our exterior design reflects our desire to just be in harmony with the nature that surrounds us. So I think you'll see that in our choice of exterior color palette, in our use of boulders throughout the property, which I know was a desire of the board from the last meeting, as well as in our use of native plantings throughout. We appreciated the recognition of our efforts the last time that we were here and through all the meetings, through your positive comments. And we hope to hear more of the same today. I do need to take one moment to share that the shifting inaccuracies and the overstatements made by one neighbor and his partner has caused our family a tremendous amount of undue stress during an already very intense process for us. We hope that you will appreciate the sensitivity that we have brought to this project, and we do ask that you approve this project today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. As you can see, it's personal.
Usually is.
If you look at, I'll try to fly over this because I think it's pretty readily understandable. The property in question, 650 Rockwood, and then it's one of just a few vacant properties left in this subdivision from the 60s. So all the rest of the properties were done in the 60s. This site has sat fallow for almost 60 years, so for sure more than 50 years, with a couple of trees growing that were in the middle. Site design, just neighborhood context I think is really interesting. So the neighbor to the west there, 630 Rockwood, immediately adjacent, has a 3,700, according to the assessor online, has a 3,713 square foot main house, a 489 garage, and a pool, and also, in addition to that, a little guest house. The neighbor to the east, according to the assessor, has 3,479, a 484 square foot garage, and 650 that we're proposing is proposing 3,430, so less than either of the two adjacent neighbors. 500 square foot garage, like everyone else, and then the ADU in addition. So the ADU is kind of like a thing we're all doing, more housing. It's a big part of their family goals, aging in place, and they have elderly parents. So it's indeed a true granny unit. If we go ahead, Stefan. The site design, if you look at that, in essence, as you can see from the last time, the site slopes away from the street to the south, and the site design basically groups the paving as compactly as possible in front of the garage. It proposes the ADU and the house traversing the terrain so that we're not going up and down the terrain. It's a one-story house, all essentially on the same level. The terracing of the site and any retaining walls are in the 2 to 3, there might be one little part by the side of the pool that's 4 feet tall. So it's all stepping terraces across the terrain from the top to the bottom. There are some really magnificent big oaks surrounding the perimeter, all maintained. I think we could just move on from there. Next. There is one comment that has been floating around that the neighbor 2 parcels over that you guys reviewed a couple of years ago that is in construction now, they did remove a couple of trees as well, oak trees in the middle of the property, which happens when a site is left for 50 years. Those things grow. Civil and stormwater for the family's health as well as for Tier 3 stormwater, we are indeed improving the stormwater situation substantially with underground chambers, which is absolutely a civil engineering best practice. So we're collecting everything. We've got permeable pavers at the driveway, and it's going to be a well-drained and properly dry site. You can go to the next. If we look at everything that we're showing today is essentially the same, nearly identical to what you saw. You told us to come back with more detail, so we're back with 60 pages.
Okay, that's a lot of detail.
60 sheets, as you know, that's where the world is headed. The floor plan here, you can see that there's a sort of an intensive arrival and changing area at the right, and then it's a 3-bedroom, 3.5-bath house with a study. If we look at the roof plan, very simple. Just the stepping in the roof plan corresponds somewhat to stepping in the floor plan. Although the floor plan, when you look at, you could just even stop on 3.2, Stefan, and we could cover those. It was interesting in your previous comments, you talked about fenestration and so forth. This is all the same as before, but we do have larger south-facing doors and windows, but they're deeply recessed under that overhang. So it's kind of a change in approach that applies to the patio. So indoor-outdoor relationships are strengthened, but the elevations are a sort of a hybrid between this contemporary approach to a traditional shaped house. If we go to the next one, the next elevation sheet, the gable ends quiet, towards the neighbors. Then if we, I think we could look at the sections, same as last time. You can see this sort of like stepping and terracing as you go down, sort of medium, small steps. If we go to the materials board, this palette is indeed very sort of warm, brown, natural, this matte, medium dark brown color for the standing seam roof and the fascia and trim. Warm gray tones for the pavers at the driveway, sandy colors for the integral color concrete. The exterior lap siding is, the whole facade system is a tour de force of rain screen and drainage and sort of dry, healthy building technology. The site walls are 2 things. By the pool, there's some board form concrete ones, and then by the out in the landscape proper, it's more sandstone, and Sam can cover that briefly. We've got the details per your request. You can see the lighting. There are some downlight only, full cutoff, also dark, and a couple of little path lights that are in the set. Then fencing, we're proposing towards the street, this one on the bottom, which is a 3.5-foot board, just kind of rural fence that just kind of marks the front yard. And then on the west side of the property, there's an existing solid wood fence that's to remain. On the south side of the property is the picket fence that abuts the park. And then to the east side is proposed that fence at the top, which is just a planted out vine-covered chain link fence. There's a lot of planting on our side and on the other side to just sort of make that kind of disappear and be a non-event, and to just screen the 2 properties. that's it from my side, and Sam could comment on landscape.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. So as far as the landscape goes, the beauty of the site was again discussed about the oak trees, existing oak trees and large beautiful pepper trees. All the boundary trees are existing. We do have some mitigation trees because of the oak trees that were going to have to be removed in the center for some of the development. And those mitigation trees are four 36-inch box Quercus agrifolia, which supplement the existing beauty of the coastal live oak. And then we have 3 olives that supplement some of the acacias, the more invasive acacias that were removed on the northwest side. And we did remove a large eucalyptus in combination with the neighbors up on the upper kind of northeast side. But the infilling of trees, you can see, is quite generous, and the existing trees are being respected with their critical root zones, and we're infilling with native grasses, coastal rosemary, lavender. We are putting some vines, the honeysuckle vine, on the fence on the east side. And as we talked about before, one of the main themes of the design is to really keep moisture and irrigation away from the buildings. So we have a lot of gravel and top dressing for walking, and to keep moisture and irrigation and sprinkler type water from migrating at all towards the building. It's quite open, but yet lushly planted, as Ken mentioned. In places where we've had some retention, you can see in the upper northwest corner, we've got some sandstone interlocking kind of dry stack walls. We're also supporting the pool equipment on the west side with kind of a little leveling of interlocking boulders, as well as the kind of the picnic area down by the beautiful pepper tree and oak tree at the south end. We do have some bioswale area too that dissipates some of the water and diffuses it naturally and lets it perk in. But this is very sustainable design, working with very little water. Our ordinance, our WELO calculations are well under half of what the allotment is, so we're really respecting the future of our water conservation efforts that we're all looking at. So this property really does an excellent job of that, and you can see that throughout the rest of the drawings. We want to go through the irrigation plan. We've got a complete irrigation plan, mostly drip. We do have some I would say substitute ground covers. We're using Carapia in that open area in that western side, which is a low, very kind of lush, dense ground cover that needs very little water. And then we're going to have conventional turf or a drought-tolerant turf on the right side for play and or activity from their 5-year-old daughter and many guests and kids that come and use the pool and the hardscape on the south end. But that's the WELO calcs, as I said. The irrigation plan supports that. We do also have some path lighting, I think, and you alluded to that, so we can maybe kind of touch on where it's wayfinding. We proposed one downlight that's up in the lower tree to that picnic area, but all the rest of the lighting are just to light up stairs and just to light up the walkway and the permeable paving throughout, so there's no accent lighting in the up category whatsoever. That kind of hits on everything. We talked about the mitigation trees and now the supplemental trees in a very sustainable and natural way, and all our water savings, conservation aspects. We do have a little bit of taller screening towards the park. We have the Westringia, which is a taller coastal rosemary, for a little bit of privacy, but there's some borrowed landscape that we want to see to the Schofield Park as well. So we're looking to kind of expand the dynamic of the views south, but we also want some privacy for the areas around the house. So I think that kind of touches on most everything. Thank you.
All right, perfect timing. Okay. To bring it back, did we get any public comment? I see we got one speaker slip. So should I call them forward now, or should, yes?
Yes, we did receive some public comment on this particular item. We do have a speaker here present. She also wrote in, Anna Yomtov.
Yeah, Anna Yomtov, if
Yeah.
you'd like to come forward and speak. You have 2. No, go up to the podium, and you have 2 minutes to speak, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anna, and I live on Rockwood. I'm one of the neighbors for this proposed project. And my timing might be off, and I don't know how included we have been thus far in conversations about the planning of the new buildings, the new home. But I wanted to come by today to voice my concerns about the project. The design of the home as it stands, from my understanding, will be using 99% of the maximum area allowed for the size of the lot. And with that size, a lot of the trees will be cut down that have been there for a really long time. The coastal live oaks, acacias, and other trees that have, again, taken so many years to grow as tall as they are. And we feel, Todd Christopher is the person that I live with, that the cutting down of these trees goes against the city of Santa Barbara and the Salida Oaks HMO's mandate to preserve these trees that characterize the beautiful and lush neighborhood in which we all live in. And as I understand it, the committee has forbade the removal of such trees for the latest home built on 712 Rockwood. And so we just are requesting that the committee also protects the trees that they're going to cut down on the lot on 650 Rockwood as well. And thank you so much for your attention to this matter. And again, I don't know if my timing is off on speaking about this, but we don't feel like we've had a voice as the neighbors to talk about the trees that they'll be cutting down. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, the other person who wrote in was Todd Christopher. I don't see anyone else who has a raised hand on Zoom, so public comment is done.
All right. Thank
Can I
you.
just ask which home you live in?
706.
Is that the one to the east?
I'm not sure it is west.
Are you an immediate neighbor to this parcel? Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions, but I have one real quick question, because some of the neighbors have brought up CC and Rs. Are there any CC and Rs in this neighborhood?
There is a homeowners association, and according to the president of the homeowners association interacting with the city, that has been reviewed and approved by them. So
Okay, so there was a board meeting and they approved the plans. Okay, got it. All right, bring it back for questions. Bring it back to Vice Chair Kalas. Do you have any questions, please?
First question I have is for staff. I just want to confirm that Ms. I hope I don't pronounce your name improperly, Ms. Yomtov? That Ms. Yomtov and Mr. Christopher, they were, I'm assuming, noticed on this project at the outset. Is that correct?
Thank you, Vice Chair Kalas. Yes, this particular project has been noticed to the public and immediate neighbors for each of the hearings. So the first conceptual review, and then when it came in April for the SFDB's consideration of the front setback modification, in addition to when it went to show, and then subsequently for this hearing.
Okay, so it's been notified on 4 different occasions. Is that correct? It's been noticed, rather.
The project has been noticed, and the neighbors were aware of the process throughout the review.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. I had a question. This is probably for Mr. Mavis. It looks like there's one tree that's being removed between the proposed residence and the ADU. And I'm just trying to understand why that particular tree is being removed. I went out, I took a look at the property again last evening, actually, and that's kind of the only notable area in my mind of the clear space of all the boulders. You're gonna have so many boulders, and good luck during bidding with your rock claws, but
They're quite beautiful, though.
they're amazing.
They really are.
Yeah, you're going to have some amazing rock walls out of that, and some other things to do with the landscaping. I'm sure that Sam will have all sorts of fun with. But the question I have is about that one particular oak that I think you're removing between those two, and if that's just a matter of construction logistics and you don't see it surviving, or if it's in poor condition, or sort of what's driving the removal of that.
Well, we worked extensively early on with Duke McPherson, and the tree that you're talking about between the kind of northwest corner of the main house, that one right there.
Yes.
The foundations and the amount of work that's going that close to the trunk is something that he felt would really, make an impact on the tree. And if we cut enough roots away, the potential of it being fragile and falling is something that was kind of a hazard. So we think that tree, and there's two others besides the ADU, and then the one over in the far right side of the main residence are the main trees that need to be removed. But that's when I did discuss the size, the 36-inch box size mitigation
Right.
trees that are sprinkled around the outside for more supplemental to kind of that Oak Grove feeling that the property has. So we're putting those in very good places. So.
And if I could just comment, add
Yeah.
to that comment regarding that tree specifically and the level of attention to all of this. In Duke's report, he notes that two of the big branches on top were broken at some point a long time ago. So it's
kind of a mutated form now, so it's not as
not an
easy.
optimal
it's not a
specimen.
That's correct. I
not a
forgot to
happy
mention
tree.
that.
Okay. And what about the large tree that's on the westerly property line, kind of in the crotch of the ADU that looks like it's being removed and maybe replaced? I don't know.
Those two right there are going to remain, and then there's two right below the ADU, 12 and 13, right there, that are again in that foundation proximity and downslope, and just are candidates that he felt could go, should go, and the potential of the mitigation would take care of that. But we'd be open to try, but I think the aspect of percentage of chance of saving them is very, very, very small.
Okay. You had noted that on the east side that you were proposing, it looked like maybe just a chain link fence or some sort of utilitarian fence that you were going to plan out in like a honeysuckle
Let a
or
honeysuckle
something.
line, correct.
I think right now there's an existing wrought iron fence. I think that, I can't remember, Todd and Christopher are both first names to me, so I think it's Mr. Christopher and Ms. Yomtov's property. It looks like they have maintained some sort of improved condition along the property line there where they can get out through a gate.
That's the south. The west side has a
That's
wood
the
fence.
east right there.
They do have a hedge on their side of, I think, ligustrum that's coming in. We'll be putting our chain link front fence on our side and planting the vine to create kind of a green privacy barrier.
Okay.
Of
It's sort of
foliage and-
down near the bottom. Maybe the fence is on their side. Okay. And if we go back to the site plan, Mr. Maphis, can you just tell us how far the pool equipment is from the property line there? I'm assuming it's outside of a setback. I just want to make sure for acoustical reasons.
Which one, the front fence?
I thought that
Pool
when,
equipment
yeah,
should be 10 feet.
and the setback there is 15 feet?
It might be 15.
Yep. Yes, correct.
If it's 15, you need to push it in a little bit, which we have room
Actually,
interior-wise.
it is allowed to be, I think, into the setback as stated
We're allowed to
here.
encroach as
It's-
long as you're below a certain decibel
Yes.
level or something? Okay.
We'll be using Worcester
It can
protocols.
be up to 5 feet to any interior, to the property line.
Okay. That dimension that I saw, I thought it said 9 foot.
It says 9 foot 4.
4.
And we can be up to 5
Oh, it's
feet to the
freestanding equipment.
Yeah.
And enclosures shall be no closer than 10 feet. And so how close are we?
No, no,
From the front.
from the
property
front
line.
line, and
Oh,
then
that's
no
the front
closer to
property
5
line.
The
feet.
interior line.
Okay, okay. And then I was just interested to know what the height of the pool deck is relative to the lowest, basically where the southerly fence meets, I'll call it the open space, not where the split rail fence is, but where the actual wrought iron fence is.
That's down at 672, 672, and the pool deck.
681.5.
681?
0.5, yeah.
So the deck's about 8 feet above? Okay.
Yeah.
And so how tall, I think you were noting there was going to be rosemary on that lower, on the
Oh,
southerly line? or-
It would be Westringia, which is more of a 4 or 5 foot shrub against that fence. We
I'm
want
just
to see
thinking about
over it.
privacy for your family as well
Yeah.
as privacy from, it, but going both ways, really. So I'm just wondering if
Well, we
that's tall enough.
Do have
canopy there.
layers of deer grass up at the upper level where you see the contours around the one tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got layers up in there of lavender and deer grass. So we're building up that slope to a higher planting up at the pool deck.
Okay.
So it does step down and terrace down from that bottom fence level. You can see all the plantings that we have in
Okay.
Westringia and Butletaria and Muhlenbergia, all layered in that underneath those trees.
Okay. I think those are the only questions I had. Oh, I have one, well, the other item is a comment.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right, Board Member Ari Cowling, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, just to follow up on the Vice Chairman's discussion about the trees, so back to you, Sam. if you
Sure.
don't mind.
You bet.
Looking back on the site layout plan and tree protection plan, it looks like there are three more trees on the south side, just south of the pool, and then west. Just wondered if you could explain what those are and how they fit into the mitigation plan?
On the southwest or southeast
South-
corner?
Yeah, it would be
South-
just by the pool, I think it's the pool equipment.
So below that is one of the mitigation oak trees. That's a large existing oak.
Okay.
And then below that is a mitigation 36-inch box oak. And then moving further to the right or to the east, we have an oak, a pepper, and an oak. And then as you move further to the right, in those terraces, we have fruit trees. We have 2 citrus trees, and in the bottom corner, the hope would be to have an avocado tree. So we've got kind of our sunny spot over there. We're trying to create some citrus and some fruit-bearing plants. And then right above that, along the east line, is a olive tree, fruitless olive. And then again, all along that fence line, we have our Lonicera Hollyana growing on the fence, as well as our grasses and lavender and some of the Westringia. And then on the northern line, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new oak trees all along the street, as well as an olive tree kind of in the middle center above the ADU and the new residence.
Okay.
The gray colors are all the existing oaks to remain. There's 8 of them.
Okay, great, great. I think what I was fading from my mic, but the red outline here is what does that represent?
That's a critical root zone.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Board Member Klein, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I have a couple. Going back to the CC&Rs, there was a neighbor, Mr. Christopher and Lomtoff says that that your SFD, your CC&R, the COHA and SFDB forbade the removal of any coastal live oak. So before you answer your question, what is the city policy on live oaks?
As far as the removal of oak trees, in general, when an oak tree is removed, we request an arborist report or some sort of documentation talking about the need to remove the tree, and typically there's a replacement that's required. This particular project did provide an arborist report, and that was reviewed by the environmental analyst and found acceptable for the project.
Okay, and is this the CCNR?
No, that's the arborist report.
Okay, and so there isn't a policy in the city that says they're they are not absolutely allowed to remove an oak tree at any circumstance?
That's correct.
Okay, and so going back to you with the CCNRs, there's also a claim that forbade the removal of any coastal live oak. So was there a letter by the HOA board or whatever that's, I mean, there's an accusation here, and I want to make sure we get to the truth to it. So there's a claim that you can't remove oak trees by your HOA, and so I want to make sure that your HOA's.
So, Mr. Chair, and then I'll turn it over to the owner to give a little bit more feedback about
Sure.
their whole approval process.
Yeah.
As far as this particular site, they do have articles or declaration of restrictions for the property.
Yes.
So as part of the HOA process for new homes, they do need to get reviewed by the HOA. And I believe in this case, there's a review body actually within their HOA that looks at the designs. And the owner did share that with the review body and the president of the HOA. So they're aware of the plans. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, there is a document on record saying that the HOA approves the removal of the oak trees or what you've proposed. This was what I want to get to. So that's on. Usually in past, an HOA president actually has shown up at the meeting to voice their support or whatever. So that's basically all I wanted to know about was that whole oak tree issue. So that's my only question. So I'll bring it back to the board for comments. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any comments, please?
First comment is be careful with your daughter climbing the pepper tree because the bees really like those. The only other comment that I have is just an observation, and I know sometimes when we're looking at color boards, the color rendering indexes are not accurate. But when I was looking at the color board, the lap siding color as it's reading, it looks very fleshy. Relative to sort of the colder color palette, and that's really my only comment.
All right. Board Member Ari Kalian, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So, I mean, strictly on aesthetic appropriateness, I remember when this project was first here, and I believe it's started on the right foot, and I appreciate the applicant, improving upon along with the site, and with the garage door with lights on the top row, keeping it single story, generous with respectful with the setbacks in multiple areas, quality architectural materials. I appreciate the warm earth tone colors. I'm fine with the siding, and I believe the proposed plantings and the fencing is well thought out and respectful to the neighbors. And I believe the project is ready for PDA and final. That's my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any comments, please?
Just to echo what Mr. Arkalian said.
Okay. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I just want to address that I think that the applicant has done their due diligence with the arborist report and the mitigation that is proposed, and also just want to mention I believe it's high fire, and having oaks close to the home is a hazard, and mention that the gravel next to the home, as well as not providing moisture, it's a great fire break as well. So I just wanted to commend that and say that there's appropriate screening along all of the property lines, and it's a large lot, so I think the FAR, the mass, bulk, and scale is comparable to the neighborhood and fits.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to follow up a little bit more on this letter because I want to put it in the record. I think it's important to understand the purpose and the job of the SFDB. The square footage, FARs, an 85% FAR is a recommended level. It's not a requirement. It's used as a barometer to make sure that anything, they recommend that you go 85% or less because of the impact of the property. If you go 85%, or if you go above that, it's just a higher level of review. More scrutiny for neighborhood compatibility issues, but that doesn't mean you cannot go above 85%, especially on the size of a lot. And I think we touched about the removal of oak trees. I think you covered that quite clearly. And special access dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling units is actually the purview of the state of California. It's something from the state of Sacramento. So we have no control over whether you can have one or not. In fact, we don't. And if you want to have one, you can have one. And in your particular case, I think I've done over 10 ADUs so far. All of them were for an elderly parent, except for one. They can't afford to live in the house, so they're going to move in the ADU and rent the main house. So that's what I found out about ADUs. So I just want to put that on the record, that the jurisdiction of ADUs comes from the state of California, not Santa Barbara. So those are my only comments. So with that being said, if someone would like to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion.
Sure.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Board Member Kellyann, if you can include in your motion the specific findings and outline why, per each finding, the project is appropriate. If you could switch to the presentation, thanks. And then go to the neighborhood findings.
So I would like to make a motion for project design approval and final approval, where the board generally believes quality architectural materials and are used, mass, bulk, and scale are aesthetically appropriate. Neighborhood preservation findings. The proposed development is consistent with the scenic character of the city and will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. The proposed development is compatible with the neighborhood, its size, bulk, and scale, keeping it one story. In the placement of the site is appropriate for the neighborhood. The proposed buildings are designed with quality architectural details and materials, the wood siding, and as well as the earth tones, maintain the natural appearance of the ridgeline or hillside. The proposed project does not include the removal or significantly impact any designated specimen tree, historic tree, or landmark tree. Public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected and preserved. The project generally complies with the good neighborhood guidelines, being respectful with the screening and the fencing around the property line. The development, including the proposed structures and grading, preserves significant public scenic views of and from the hillside. The development, including the proposed structures and grading, is appropriate to the site, designed to avoid visible scarring, does not significantly modify the natural topography of the site, where the single story is, sits below, and no significant grading is performed. The development maintains a scale and form that blends with the hillside by minimizing the visual appearance of the structure and overall height of the structure.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. And can I just add a couple more specific items? I think that, and I'm speaking for the board, so raise your hand. The project is it's a well-integrated design with the existing landscape and the bucolic nature of the residents, so I think that's an easy way to find this compatible with the neighborhood. And the applicant has provided us with an arborist report and is providing mitigation measures in regards to the oak trees.
Yeah, I'll add that to the motion.
And yeah, I wondered, the maker of the motion, you said something about the single-story house, which is, in follow-up with you, is the single story of the house is a desirable component for the compatibility of the neighborhood, I think is what you wanted to say.
That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. All right, thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
and Board Member Klein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you all.
You're welcome. And is there a 10-day appeal period? And there is a 10-day appeal period for this project. Thank you. See you later, Sam.
Thanks, Brian.
See you later. You want this back, right?
Or I think keep that for a record.
Oh, God. Okay. All right, moving on to item number 5, 2121 Los Tunas Road. This is a continued item for concept review. Proposal to construct a new 4,680 square foot, two-story single-unit residence with a detached 864 square foot detached garage and a covered deck and porch located on a vacant lot in the Hillside Design District. The project includes a new driveway, a lap pool, and associated site and landscape improvements, including a removal of 7 coast live oaks, one of which is located in the front setback, to be replaced with new replacement oaks. The proposed total of 4,680 square feet on a 46,294 square foot lot is 93% of the maximum guideline Florida lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for design approval. Project was last reviewed on January 31st, 2022. Do we have the minutes to put on the record?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll bring those up in just a moment.
Yeah, and I can summarize them in my presentation.
Excellent.
I have them down.
Okay, yeah, because if you can kind of just go down that list and how you address them, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
This was the one that we were supposed to see, and you didn't know you had to be present.
I live in Colorado, and I was trying to
Like
unmute.
a month ago or something, right?
Oh.
Well, it's nice to see you in person.
Nice to meet you all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, if you introduce yourselves and kind of address those minutes, that'd be great.
So I'm Ian Williamson. I'm the owner of the property. And Aaron, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Erin Labuda. I'm a civil engineer with Flowers and Associates.
Yes, so thank you again for having us here today. We actually missed 2 meetings. We missed that one, and then I was here a week ago for the meeting that was canceled, unfortunately.
yeah,
So
that
no worries. What it enabled me to do was spend more time with my neighbors.
Oh, good.
And I've really learned a lot from what they want to see in the project. You guys also reviewed and I think gave final approval on my neighbor's property, the Synots, and we learned a lot from that process. I was able to listen in on that one. So there's 4 things that your meeting minutes will have captured that I need to address today, and I think we've hopefully addressed those, and I'm hoping that you guys agree it's a good progression of the project. The first one is the driveway. So we'll touch on that, where it's located, line of sight concerns by some of the neighbors, and that was a lot of math, and Aaron can kind of talk about it, and I think we've kind of met that need. The other was the home mass. So I apologize, that description you read at the beginning, we brought the mass down. We're at an 85% FAR now.
Wow.
The description you had there was at 93, and the home size is now 4,280 square feet. So my apologies, that wasn't updated prior, but it's reflected in the full set that you all have. So we're down to an 85% FAR. We'll talk about that. The third major concern was around visibility from neighbors. We're up on the top of the ridge, essentially, so there's visibility concerns from below. And then you guys brought that up. As you drive up Los Tunas Road, you look at our house. It's a single-story home up top, but it looks like 2 stories, and as one neighbor said, it almost looks like 2.5 stories from below because we have a retaining wall for the pool. So we'll show you how we're hopefully mitigating that. And then the 4th one was around just the architecture and materials. So let me get into it. I think you've all seen the location. Make sure there we go. This is different than my. So let's first talk about the driveway if we can. And I'm going to go to Aaron's civil engineering. You can see it here on the left. This is that blind corner that's been a concern even prior to this project. So a lot of people walk this loop. It's a very popular loop for Shetty Park and kind of around East Las Tunas and then up Las Tunas here. What we've proposed here, and I've gotten feedback in the last week from the neighbors, I think everyone's very happy, is the wall, the actual grading of what right now is a very steep bank that borders the road. The road Las Tunas was cut, I'm guessing 100 years ago, and it's very tight. The cars were much smaller and they drove a lot slower than the cars that are going up Las Tunas Road now. So what we've done is we're removing the bank and putting a retaining wall here that will be, and Aaron, keep me honest here, I believe 8 feet or lower in all aspects. We do lose 3 small oak trees that are very unhealthy. They have exposed roots. The arborist report kind of outlines all this. He's got a tree by tree kind of health assessment. So this is addressing the line of sight thing, and I probably need to keep going so that I address the other things. But this is how we're going to address. Again, I mentioned kind of the math. I think it's 155 feet we need to be able to see from our car here down to an oncoming car coming up the street. And that was laid out by the city. So we're meeting that need. And then it's 115 feet looking to the east or up the road. And Aaron's drawings that you'll see kind of outline that. The other thing about the driveway was the neighbor's concern, and I think it's on, yes, here it is, that we were not exactly in line with their driveway because of headlights. This is their driveway above us here. Their property line to the west is the same property line as our east property line, so if that makes sense. So that's why we know we're offset from them. And I met them, and Ivan and April are their names, and they were very happy to see that we're offset from each other. So that's the driveway. The home mass, let me get into that in some detail here, if I go the right direction. So as I mentioned, we've shrunk the house to be 85% FAR. We've also tiered the house down. We've staggered it in 4 levels, so it used to be purely a 2-level home. We're now stepping it down, and you'll see that from the elevations here. This is a good view. So this is the west elevation here up top, and as you can see, it's a single-story home from, as you come in from the front door, and then we're going down to this lower level, which is, half of it's below grade. And then this is the retaining wall for the pool. The only neighbor that has direct view of our project is our neighbor up here directly to the east. This is the Ensleys, Craig and Suzanne Ensley. Again, we've dropped the house so the tallest roof line is 4 feet below their finished floor. It's a patio home. So as architects laid out, we've lowered the house to be below that sight line. This is their view. If they were down below, they're basically up here, but this is kind of that elevation, the east elevation that they would look at. Beyond that, everyone's below us. They're the only neighbor that is technically above us. And then if I go to some of the renderings, these are existing oak trees on the property that we're maintaining. We mentioned we're removing 6. There's about 30 oak trees on the property. I will tell you the arborist report, and you read it, they're all stressed from the drought. We've actually lost 3 since I've owned it in the last 24 months. So he's really saying we got to get water on these and start really taking care of them as quickly as we can. This is one of the views from down on Las Tunas Road. Again, here's some of the plantings that we're proposing to hide that retaining wall, and a couple palms there. This is the view that you asked me to present as a rendering from the first meeting we had. So this would be like lower Las Tunas Road as you're driving up. So again, we're proposing some vegetation to sort of soften the house. And that's the mass, the visibility. As far as the architecture, we are sticking to a white stucco home. I like to call it a California contemporary Mediterranean home. I know it's not the red tiled roof Spanish home, but it's, again, we're proposing fewer materials, and that was one thing you guys all provided feedback on, was we had more materials as our siding, and now we're down to, you know, the natural Santa Barbara sandstone on some of the retaining walls, and then white stucco and silver, you know, framed windows and silver fascia. So again, trying to really kind of keep it clean. We are really wanting to, you know, respect and sort of, you know, honor the land and keep the oak trees. It's not a very elaborate landscaping plan at this point. I can go up to that here in a minute, because we really don't want to alter the land that much. I think we've got some succulents, some small ground cover that we're proposing up by the entrance. But if I go to the landscape plan, it's mostly oak mitigation that we're doing. I think, as was mentioned earlier, we're doing a 3-to-1 mitigation of new, healthier oaks. And the arborist, Bill Spiewak's our arborist, he was very much in favor of, you know, getting new, healthy oaks that will, over the next, you know, 100 years, grow to take place of the ones that are unhealthy and are falling, you know, over right now. So that's it. I would love to get your feedback on a couple things. One is the retaining walls. Again, we're proposing Santa Barbara sandstone walls, which would include that retaining wall on the street on Las Tunas. I'm open to what you all think. If we wanted to make those white stucco walls and do a vine up those so they're green, as my neighbors drive up the road, we're happy to explore that. And then same with the retaining wall by the pool. Right now it's stone, but again, I'm open to ideas if we want to make that a green wall, if you will. And then the last comment I'd love to get your feedback on is the first meeting. It was proposed to remove a hedge that we had along the whole property line, and the reason I had that hedge was for screening. And then also we've gotten feedback from some of the neighbors, some of the letters, the public record letters around rocks falling off the property and down onto the road. So there's a couple neighbors that are concerned. We had to get a rig up there to do our soil sampling, and that really caused a lot of unease because of the rocks. So I'd like to go back to a wood fence. My neighbor to the north, it's a house that's been there for 100 years, has a it's like 6x6 posts, about that tall, and then like 2x8, you know, just two of them, just a very simple kind of ranch feeling fence that I would then you see it in the hillside area where people then line the inside of that fence with, you know, like hog wire or something that would retain rocks. So that is not indicated on our landscape plan. We were going to do like a chain link fence that was buried in a hedge essentially, and that's been removed. So if there's ideas on how you all think that we best could maintain that edge of that, our high bank, you know, and the rocks and things that would potentially roll off the hill. I think that's all I got for now.
All right, thank you very much. Did we get any public comments? I do believe we did get a letter.
Concerned about things rolling.
Yes. Yes, we did get one public comment written in from Sally Warner Arnott, and I do not see anyone with a raised hand on Zoom.
Okay. All right, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
Do perhaps we could go to the site plan or the topo plan that you had up a second ago?
This is a grading plan. Does that relate to your question? The site plan, or do you want to see trees?
This works, but you can show me the pretty one if you want to also, either way. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
So, I am familiar with this property. I'm one of the people that walks the loop sometimes here. Where are the boulders that the neighbors are concerned about being loose and running off the site? Can you point on the parcel map here where you
Yeah.
think that's occurring the most? Because I have a feeling I know where that is, but just for, for clarification.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that with what Aaron's proposed for this retaining wall, right here is the biggest cut. You can see how tight the topo lines are right on the curve. So a rock fell there onto the road, and one of my neighbors, I think, was driving her daughter to school, and she was very upset about that. So it's typically along this dark line here, but at the top of the cut. In fact, there's a boulder sitting right about where my hand is right now that is making me nervous. It's about the size of a bathtub, so I need to get a backhoe to pull it back to get that removed. But it's generally along that, I guess that's the setback line.
Because it's really cut as you come kind of along the back side of the ridge, right? I mean, it's not on sort of the town-facing portion of it
Right.
where it softens, right? It's really once you kind of make that bend.
Exactly, it's this
Okay.
upper part.
Okay, all right. And then could we take a look at the site sections that cut through the house again? I appreciate the fact that you've worked to step this down. Okay, great. So can you tell me, it's hard to read at this scale.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how tall your floor-to-floor heights are, and I'm trying to understand how tall the lower retaining wall is that retains the pool.
Yeah, so I had a feeling you'd ask, so I tried to write down some of these elevations. So level 1 is the front door.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 is at 100, so that's this whole floor here. It steps down 2 feet from this main entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So the roof is at 115, this area down here. So the main level 1 up here is a 12-foot plate-to-plate.
And the mass that's behind it, is that at the same level? So there's a clear story window I'm seeing that looks like
Yeah.
it's popping up from behind.
Right, we're trying to let light in. Let's see if I have that elevated. Yeah, over here. So it's just a step up to allow, it's clear story, right, for that light, that western sunlight to come into that entrance area.
So the 12-foot
Is to
height that you're
that.
talking about is to that, and then the mass to the right of it?
That steps down to that level, and that's also,
So that's the
12 foot.
level that's 2 feet below it?
right.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue on.
Yeah, no, it's a little complicated. So yeah, that's 2 feet step down, and then down to the lower level, level 3, is also the same roof heights. We did drop the pool down 4 feet further, so you can see these are steps, those concrete steps there. So this wall now goes from about 7 feet in height, this retaining wall, down to 0. Before, it was 11 feet high, before we stepped down the pool. So that was a lot of concern, I think, with how tall it is. So that, to answer your question, is about a 7-foot retaining wall for the pool.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit more about the planting that's proposed in the immediate proximity to that wall, to the retaining wall?
Sorry, actually, it was better with this mouse. I'm a little. Okay, I like the wheel better. Okay, so around that retaining wall, we're proposing 2 species, and again, this could evolve, but it's the, help me out here, western rosebud, and then below it, this snow flurry and we picked those because they're the right mass and height to cover that retaining wall. Beyond that, it's, all these small green or new plantings of oaks to replace the ones that we are removing up by the cut.
Okay. And what is the distance from the corner of that retaining wall? It looks like it almost sits right on setback line there, on the, I
North
guess
end
that's
here?
the southwest corner of the retaining wall there, just to the left of your cursor where yes, right there.
Okay.
Is that right on setback there, and what is that distance from right of way to?
Yeah, I believe isn't it a 30-foot setback? That's the envelope for the building envelope.
Okay, so do you know what that distance is?
I believe it's 30 feet.
Okay. And then your exterior renderings are kind of showing as though the exterior color is sort of a limey. I don't know if that's just not the renderings so much, but the elevations. I think they came across as being a little bit more.
Yeah, we literally were going to do pure white like you see here in town.
Okay.
White stucco.
Okay, those are the only questions I have.
All right, thank you. Board Member Ari Kelly, do you have any questions, please?
I do. So I'm on page 9 of the PDF, sheet A2.
2.0.
2.A2.0. Yeah, I'm on the south elevation, so.
There it is, yep. South elevation, got it.
I just wanted to confirm, I don't recall seeing this much amount of glazing at this elevation before. Was there a change to the chimney orientation, or was it in that place before? I just wanted to be sure.
You're right. We did move the chimney to the corner. It was in the middle of the house here, and just the layout of the inside, the living room, it was blocking our views down towards the harbor. So we moved it to the corner. You were right.
Got it. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, maybe we can go to the civil plan. I just had a couple questions about that elevation at the driveway entry, of how that wall kind of ties into the landscape.
Would it be on one of these sheets or
The one before this.
up here?
So I think you said at the highest it would be 8 feet. Is that correct? And then at the lowest, kind of if you could point out the height.
Yeah, so the lowest is going to basically daylight closer to the roadway, like
Down here?
Down here. And then as you go up Las Tunas, it's going to go back up to more like 8 feet in the middle. And then that wraps around and stays as you come up like here and go around.
Around the corner?
Yeah, it stays somewhere around 6 or 8 feet and then kind of tapers back down to, I think, 2 or 3 feet
So
along the driveway itself.
So the lowest towards the bottom of Las Tunas is more like 2 feet, is what you said, or?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be basically tapering to nothing.
Yeah.
At that point.
Great. I was wondering if it's possible to curve it more so with the contours and make it less engineered.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's something we've discussed, I think, previously and just haven't gone around to it. But yeah, it's no problem to do that.
Great. And then I had a question about palms. Is there a reason for the palms?
I just like palms.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair answer. Just curious why.
I'm open to, if you have a species that you prefer. We were just, instead of just hedges, we were wanting something with some height to it. Yeah.
Great. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, do you have access to the original floor elevation, exterior elevations?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple questions.
Oh, did I skip you? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Brendlinger, do you have any questions, please?
Way to step up.
Yes. How did I skip?
Yeah, what if I said I had no
I'm
questions?
sorry about that.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. You mentioned, Mr. Williamson, that you talked to a number of the neighbors, and I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on that and tell us, how many and what else you heard and what you told them and,
Yeah.
just some color on that.
Yep. So at the top of Las Tunas is a cul-de-sac, and there are 4 neighbors up there that I think on average have probably lived in our neighborhood for 50 years. So the Abbeys, the Hughes, then Marilyn, I'm forgetting her last name. We actually spent time with each of them. Their biggest concerns have been the blind curve and the driveway. So I think they were all very pleased with what Aaron has proposed, because it solves a couple different problems. So that's that set of neighbors. The neighbor directly across from us, as I mentioned, their concern was our alignment of the driveways and the fact that we're offset. They seem pleased. The neighbors in the Santiago development below,
right?
You probably heard the same concern with my neighbors, the Sign-Off's house. Got that name right? About them looking up at our house, and it's just a balancing act. We're burying the house as much as we can into the hillside, but then we have that issue of not doing too much excavation and altering of the land.
Right.
So we've really tried to stick to the guidelines that the city provides as far as architecture and the design. We did receive a letter from one of the neighbors at Santiago below us, and it's hard for me to read because that home I went and looked it up, it's 105% FAR. Most of the houses down there are over 100% FAR. So I feel like we've gotten our mass down to 85%. So I'm trying to keep everyone happy, I guess is a long-winded answer.
No, it's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. So I guess also in that regard, and particularly from the Santiago neighborhood, have you considered any way to directly address the view from downslope in the way of story poles or anything like that, so they could visualize what you're proposing?
I mean, that's why we did the renderings. It would be, I guess, my first response. From the below the row below them. I haven't received any feedback from any of them except the one neighbor who's the furthest up Santiago, and she invited us in. We spent an hour on her patio. She seems to be okay because what's happened is when she knew the lot was bought, she started to let her trees grow. She used to trim them. So when we stood in her back property, you couldn't see our house, our lot, and so she seemed to be okay with that. I think just the size, she preferred it was smaller, but again, our FAR seems to be in line. So yeah, the others on Santiago, I have not received feedback from.
Okay. And then on that elevation, if we could take a look at that, I think it's still A 2.0, the south elevation. I think in your presentation you mentioned at least that you were open to some other treatment of that lower rock wall.
Yep.
And so my question is whether you had what else you may have already considered that might minimize that or disguise it in some way, just to shrink the optics of that.
So to me, there's sort of 3 options. There's nicely poured, board form poured, or whatever you call it, kind of just concrete.
Right.
And then growing a vine up it or some kind of nice landscaping treatment. The other is to white stucco it so it kind of blends into the house. That might be a little bit more jarring, be like a third sort of element. The neighbors, I asked them the same question. The 2 neighbors that gave me feedback prefer the Santa Barbara sandstone because there's a lot of old historic walls in our neighborhood that have that finish to them. So it's not well represented in the renderings, that sandstone look, but it's...
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, then I think that, you mentioned some other things that sounded like they were of great interest there, the Boulder Plan and the Oaks Plan. Are those things that you're thinking of sharing with the neighbors then, or have already?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will come back to my next meeting with you all with a plan. If you guys don't have a strong opinion about one or the other, I'll probably poll all my neighbors and say I'm thinking about doing a wood fence here. I think they'll probably be most pleased with that one. The neighbor on Santiago would prefer a big screened hedge, but I think the feedback I got from the first meeting was that's not as natural with the landscape, so I'm trying to get a happy medium here.
Yep, yep. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to, I didn't miss anyone, right? Exterior elevations from the previous project, do we have quick access to that? Just curious to see what the before and after.
To Mr. Chair and the rest of the board, the previously reviewed plans are up on the screen. You have access to them. The one that says yes, old plans. And then if those are not the plans that you're looking for, I can try to pull something else up that was submitted through Acela. But as I'm substituting, I'm not as familiar with the project.
Is that right?
This is probably a good one to show because you can see the mass. Like when we had the pool at the same level as the lower level of the house, it made a huge retaining wall. Yeah. And so the feedback you all provided was, can we lower that? And then same with the house. The 2 floors were all one level. Yeah. So it gave it too much mass. So I don't know if that answers your.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that was the other feedback you all gave, was we didn't have renderings. There wasn't any vegetation, so it looked so harsh.
Just even plain, do we have just front, do we have orthogonal, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question quite a bit. Yeah, you were talking about 2-piece mission tile, but there's actually a modern home in our design guidelines, so we don't necessarily get stuck with 2-piece mission tile. So that was my only question. I'll bring it back to the board for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
I'll just restate that I really do appreciate the fact that you have worked to try to step this down and hunker it down a little bit, and that you've reduced some of the size to the project. I think it helps it a lot. This is a prominent site. The sign-offs or sign-offs that did their project next door, it's a very low linear. It just kind of hugs the top of the ridge line, and you're a little bit more challenged by that, I think, because you're kind of where this ridge sort of shifts, and I can appreciate that. Part of me wants to say, let's just shave part of it off and hunker it down a little bit more, but yeah, then you're increasing, grading and all sorts of other things, probably creating retaining wall requirements for yourself as you come up the driveway and adding other costs to it. I know there's some modern homes in the neighborhood that are white, specifically if you go down Las Tunas, right there at the T. There's a very modern home there. And I think that works there in that white color, because it's hunkered down further on the slope. Our guidelines specifically talk about natural earth tone colors that blend with the surrounding topography. And so I am concerned about the starkness of this on the hillside, and the fact that I think that's going to make it even more of a beacon than it already is going to feel like when it gets built. So that's a concern I have. I'm rethinking the thought about the hedge along the right-of-way. There are a lot of properties in this general area of town where they have kind of a loose feeling, and Ms. Klein could probably help us with this, sort of a loose edge to them where it's some toy on and then maybe some sort of prunus, and they kind of mix up the different sort of native vegetation that gets relatively tall. So, I mean, if you don't keep it managed, they will become trees. But if you do, they could be 8 feet, something like that. And I think that might solve some of the issues with the lower neighbors, as well as some of your desires to retain some fall off of the property. So that might be a way to consider approaching that edge rather than it being a manicured privet hedge or something like that, so it would feel like it has always been there. I'm not real excited about the palm trees because I just don't think they are endemic to this area of town. There's something that's been planted on Chase Palm Park, and those are all things that have been introduced, and that's not really what we see out here in this sort of more rural area of town that's dry, and it's oak and it's chaparral. So I would encourage you to move away from the palms if you can bring yourself to do that. I would be interested in seeing some sun shading studies so that we can understand the south elevation more and whether we are going to have glare issues off of it because you've increased the amount of glazing on that facade.
Could I mitigate that with tinting? You know, a lot of modern glass allow me to kind of minimize that.
Sometimes the tinting makes it worse. So what I'm really looking for is, you know, at high noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, is your eave or your cantilevered flat roof, does it extend far enough so that there's enough shade on there that we're not getting harsh glare off of it, is what we're trying to ascertain. I like the idea of the curved wall at the corner rather than straight wall. And I would like to see some more vegetation in direct proximity, something, again, more along the native lines, Toyon or something like that, up against this taller wall. One thing that might be interesting to consider is how the site walls are treated, and you might want to think of the pool retaining wall as being a site wall. Maybe those are treated differently than the stone on the house. I worked on a project out at UCSB that you might be interested to go and see. It's called Henley Hall, and they used native sandstone on it, but they used it in a very modern fashion. It has kind of a horizontal coursing to it, and I think that would work really nicely with this type of architecture, but that doesn't lend itself to the neighborhood. So there might be an opportunity to differentiate the residents from the site walls, where maybe you want to stick with a 5-point sandstone wall or a loose, you know, a stacked stone wall for those, and then sort of transition to that as part of the residence. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Ari Kaling, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So I'm on sheet A4.2, page 13 of the PDF. So I appreciate the applicant for providing these street views. That's what we asked for, and helps me get a better understanding of the project. So I'm zooming in and I'm looking at the projection of the deck, and I just don't. I'm struggling with how this floating deck feature element, like I believe it should maybe study how it can be better integrated with the rest of the house. I'm not sure what you're planning to put under, whether it's wood planking or wood planking. But I'm kind of struggling in understanding, like, because it's just really, it looks like it's really projecting out, and I'm, you know, a lot of people are going to be driving up and seeing this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm upset we didn't get it updated here, but we do plan on doing like 1x4 TNG, you know, like a fir ceiling that extends out into the eaves. So instead of it looking gray and kind of bleak like that, it'd be a wood roof line.
Okay. But yeah, I would like to maybe see that in the next round, and if there's any other way you can study how this deck can better integrate with the rest of the house. I'm not sure if a column would help or something with some substance. In terms of plate heights, I believe there should be a slight reduction in them, you know, around, you know, 10 feet, unless there's other homes that, you know, I believe you mentioned a 12-foot plate height, but I believe that should be studied. And then along the south elevation, you know, there was the amount of glazing that was proposed, and I have a hard time telling you to, like, I have a hard time suggesting, you know, I know why there's that much glazing. It's quite a bit of glazing, but maybe other board members can shine light on, no pun intended, but other board members can, you know, shine light on, you know, whether that amount of glazing with plus the transoms on top, as like 2 stories full of glazing, is aesthetically appropriate or compatible with the neighborhood.
Yeah. Is it okay if I make a comment quickly? So I asked a couple of neighbors at the top, and one of the gentlemen, Mr. Hughes, mentioned Peter Edwards is a pretty famous architect that's built 2 houses up there that are top plate to floor glass. They're kind of that mid-century modern look. So, and I could bring them up in the next meeting. I probably should do that to show it. So there is a bit of a precedence for glass, you know, sort of that contemporary California look. So I'll definitely take into effect the glazing issue. We'll study that, and then your points about overhanging.
Yeah, from street view, yeah. Those are my comments, thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any comments, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple comments, none of which would be a surprise to you. I think, as it's been described, this is a very prominent lot, which is probably exactly why you bought it. That brings with it that visibility to the neighborhood, and I think in the context of the design guideline requirements to fit into the neighborhood and be consistent with the neighborhood, I think architecturally you're in my view you're there, because I've been up on that site as well in the neighborhood, and there's quite a variety of architecture up there, and it does look like the materials are high quality, but I think your challenge is still that south perspective, and from the Santiago side. So my suggestion to you is to try to address that in a way to at least mitigate the fear that your neighbors will have about what will hang over them, and you could do that in any number of ways. You know, one of which are the story poles I mentioned, so that, you know, an elevation tells you one thing, but it doesn't tell you from your home what you're going to see. And one answer to that is story poles, or else some engineered sight lines that actually show what's visible from that first line of Santiago homes uphill, and that's geometry. So that, you know, I leave it up to you to figure that out. And then the other approach is from a design standpoint. It's been mentioned that you have some ability to shrink some of the plates, and whether that's the first floor or the second floor, I don't know. But, you know, just looking at A4.3 which is the next one, I think, after that one. Yeah. Um, the area over the pool has a certain cavernous feel to it, that is, it's kind of well, at least from this perspective, it looks almost like an open garage door, or bay is probably the better word for it. It just seems like there's an opportunity there to soften that negative space on this elevation. And then the other thing then is of course, the landscaping, and then that break-in materials that the vice chair brought up. I think that's a good suggestion to try to separate that embankment below the pool from the rest of the house, so it doesn't look like a continuous sheet of home, and something that disappears as much as possible. I don't know what that is either, but that's why you pay the big bucks to all of your architects and planners, I guess. And then, lastly, that I surfaced in my questions, which is you've done a lot of work on this, a lot of good work that I think that to the extent that you can share that in the neighborhood, as you mentioned, you were planning on doing, you'll be welcome to a lot more home opening parties in your neighborhood by reaching out like that, with the Boulder plan, the Oak plan, whatever you end up doing on this south side, I think will serve you well by publicizing a lot of the work that you've done.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I'd like to commend you on the sensitivity to the topography of the site and dropping the pool down. I think that was a good change. Also, your communication with the neighbors is appreciated, and sensitivity to the FAR. Just to comment on plant material, I think that in that what's shown right now, just clusters of native plants make sense, as far as Toyon, like Board Member Kalas mentioned, Rhamnus, Ceanothus are good natives to have, and clustering them and then having a break because it's high fire. So just having clusters that feel more natural is a nice solution, and just different sizes of plant material. As I brought up, the wall would be better to be curved, moving with the contours, I believe. It'll feel more natural. And then even possibly studying maybe terracing in a certain situation where you just have a low 3-foot stacked stone wall to bring the height down if feasible. And then, yeah, just thinking about the palms being a little more intentional. If you do want palms, maybe closer to the home, a smaller palm, just thinking more about their location. Once again, high fire, you need to keep them 10 feet away, so something to consider.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm looking at this Google map, and I'm just noticing that the predominant forests in that neighborhood are red tile roof. But be that as it may,
It's eclectic.
it's eclectic. Yeah. So I haven't been in the neighborhood. You're more. But anyway, I like the sandstone. I think that's a very good introduction, and I think you did go by our guidelines. That's why I showed that to you. I think you actually were right on the mark with. I think that was a great success in terms of being a little more sympathetic to the topography. Yeah, the one balcony or the deck on the up that juts out like that, that's a little uncomfortable. It looks uncomfortable. It just sticks out too far. It's not, so you can do it, but it just looks architecturally uncomfortable. And I think that's what Mr. Brentlinger and Mr. Arkelian were kind of addressing, is to somehow soften that so it doesn't look so uncomfortable, like put a column underneath it or reduce the yawningness of it.
Yep.
The stark white is a trend. I like off-white, but that's not the trend. Everyone wants their stucco to look really white right now. And it's also energy efficient to be white because it reflects the heat or something. But I would prefer a softer color, more earth tone color for that. Yeah, possibly lower the plate, but I think it's a great house. I think it'll look really beautiful there. So those are my only comments. So they're here for concept review. So if someone would like to entertain a motion, that'd be great.
I'll make a go.
Okay, I saw you push the button.
I did, I pushed the button. Okay, so, we don't really give concept approval, we just give comments, right? Yeah, okay.
So the motion would be to continue indefinitely, and then with whatever comments you want to include in the motion.
Okay, so I'm going to continue indefinitely back to our full board with the following comments. We would like to ask that you, I've got a litany here, so I'm going to try to put words to this as I go through this, so give me just a little bit of latitude here. We'd like you to consider the color palette of the stucco and the windows and fascias. We understand that you like the white, but we would like you to consider a more neutral color palette that would be a little bit more compatible with the hillside. We would like you to consider the reduction of place heights to a greater degree, if at all possible. Perhaps approximately 2 feet, get it down to maybe a 10-foot plate height where you can. We would like you to study the cantilever deck that's on the, I'll call that the main level of the house, and whether it can be stepped back or brought closer to the southerly wall of the residence in order to reduce its prominence as viewed from Las Tunas. We would like to ask that you provide us with material information for the underside of the eaves and associated colors. We would like you to consider the removal of or the relocation of the palms that you have proposed. That you provide us with a sun shading study, most specifically for the south elevation and the westerly elevation. The intent of those studies is to convince the board that we won't have any significant glare off of the glazing on those two facades because you've increased the glazing there, especially on the south side. We are in support of curving the wall at the northwest corner in proximity to, I think that's the right-of-way line. We would like to encourage you to consider a cluster of native plants. Species that were discussed were toyon, ceanothus, prunus, rhamnus. And that you consider the manner in which the sandstone is incorporated into the project, and that there may be deviation in the way the site walls are treated from the manner in which it's used on the main residence. Does anybody want to add anything? Or I guess that's my motion, and then we can amend it if need be.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
And I'll propose an amendment. I would like to add to it some, in addition to the sun study, some, at a minimum, a geometric view from Santiago up to that south side.
You like a site section?
Yes.
Okay, provide a site section.
Yeah, and which is a conditional one, meaning that, assuming that's the simpler version of this, if that shows that there's really nothing to see from down at Santiago, then that's all you would need to do. But if there is some visibility that is at all material, that you consider the use of the story poles.
I don't understand. I'm not clear what the.
I think, and I think the intent behind what you're trying to amend
Yeah.
is you're trying to provide an opportunity for the neighbors to be assured that this doesn't feel as though it's looming over them.
Correct.
Okay, so that can be accomplished through story poles, or the alternative that Mr. Brettlinger is recommending is that you would provide a rendering from Las Tunas Street more across the street rather than, there, you did provide us with the one that kind of looks up towards the north, but I think you're trying to get one more from pedestrian level further down on the street.
Yes, from specifically from the Santiago, first row of Santiago houses up to your south side of the home. As we've seen the rendering, but it's really a rendering from downslope from your property. And I'm suggesting that that view be taken further downhill. Like on the other side of Las Tunas as it wraps around your site.
So kind of where his cursor is right now, Mr. Brown?
Yeah. The only thing I would like to point out is Santiago is down here. That's why there was so much comment about the Sinot residence.
Right.
That's their property here. We're pretty far up north of them. They're down there. I mean, I'm happy to provide you another view as you'd like to see from the road or across the road. But just to point it out, if I wish maybe we need to add that to our neighborhood lot lines here is the Santiago neighborhood because it's pretty far southeast of us.
Well, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And but if you
What if we asked them to just stake the one, are there certain corners that you'd want to see? Could we ask them to just story pole just certain corners, Mr. Brettlinger? Would that be possible?
well, absolutely. I'm trying to actually avoid the story poles. And the
Well, yeah, I'm kind of, this whole direction of questioning, because the neighbors, this is not an issue with the neighbors. This is, you're bringing up something here. So I think and if we do ask for story poles, that's a whole procedure. So I think if you have a specific concern that you want clarification by, then speak that concern. But don't speak in terms of neighbors that aren't here, because I don't know, we're not sure.
Well, and maybe I can't tell, I guess, is what is visible, what the nearest neighbors to the south of you would actually be able to see. That's where I'm trying to go with
So
that.
you're trying to ensure privacy for them?
Yeah, yeah.
It really was that view, this one here, if you're walking on the road. Now, it'll be even less than this if you're in Santiago because you're further away. You're another 50 yards away from where this rendering was done. But I'm happy to provide that view
Okay.
that you're asking for.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll add to the amendment that the applicant shall provide, can you tell me what the sheet number is on this sheet, please?
A4.0.
They skip really easily as you scroll.
I'm good at this. 4.2.
Okay, so the applicant provide a perspective rendering, a 3D rendering, similar to that shown on the current drawing sheet A4.2, but that perspective will be taken from across Las Tunas Road in the Santiago neighborhood. Is that acceptable?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, so that's my motion.
I'll second again.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go.
Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Achille,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you when you get back.
Have you communicated at all with MMA Architects in terms, they're the ones doing
Yeah.
the signs, right?
Right.
I'm just wondering because those parcels right now are so closely tied to each other.
Yeah.